Did you find any interesting relational dissimilarities or things that you had to adjust to dating in China? Do they have a different attitude towards sex?
They're not as open about it, for sure. However, I was surprised how quick it converted into sex. They don't shave their none. This is a joke, but it's a 100% true story. I didn't know what the word for like when a woman is like loving it, right? So it turns out that the word that Chinese women say when they're like loving it is 舒服, which translates to English as comfortable. Comfortable in English has a meaning, but 舒服 in Chinese means I'm loving it. Obviously, if a Chinese girl came to America and she was with some dude and he was like, oh my God, a Chinese girl would be like, why are you bringing God into this? Whereas for me, I was doing what I was doing and she was like, oh, 舒服. And I was like a couch? Jesus Christ, I thought I was killing it here. I'm the IKEA of cunnilingus. I was so into being an altar boy that you were supposed to be in 4th grade, but I asked if I could start in 3rd grade. So I actually became an altar boy early.
You want to get like advanced treatment?
Yeah, me and Brian Byrne, we both went to Monsignor Fogarty and we were like, we're ready.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be up there, man.
Did he
I mean,
agree?
I have a joke about it, but like the joke is based in truth, which is like, I just thought it would be cooler to be up there than down with the crowd.
The peasants.
With the audience. I want to be up there.
I like that you saw it as the stage.
I mean,
this is an altar?
I think it's subconscious, but I do think I preferred to be up there. Like I did get a kick out of that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I enjoyed being an altar boy.
Did Monsignor, what's his name?
Monsignor Fogarty was cool. Later on.
Did he agree? Did he agree that you were ready?
I agreed. I started.
But he looked at you, he was like, yeah, you got it.
And Monsignor Fogarty wasn't like that. I've encountered plenty that were, but Monsignor Fogarty was, he was cool. He was fine.
No.
He actually, that Monsignor Fogarty actually once said to my mother, he's going to be some sort of performer. He's got something.
Oh, really?
The priest said to my mom. Yeah.
See, I carry a weird guilt with this, because like same thing. So I've had, one, as a caveat, amazing priests in my life. Like again, there's obviously this fucking stereotype priest.
Yeah, I've had good and bad, honestly. Yeah.
I've never had bad.
Oh, okay. You didn't live in Ireland.
That's a good point. That is true. No, I've had only great priests. Actually, my wife and I were introduced by a priest. That was like, hey, come to Bible study. Like, it wasn't direct, but he was like, yeah, come out, come hang out. And that's where we met. It was wild. But with that being said, I only had like good experiences, and I remember that feeling of wanting to be an altar boy and seeing like them like process through the mass and being like,
it's the ceremony.
Yo, that should be me. And my mom wouldn't let me. She's like,
really?
Yeah. She was like, nah, we're not dealing with that. I think she was a little afraid of like the whole fucking.
Yeah, but you're younger than me, so like there was none of that. Like none of those concerns when I was doing it. And yeah, it's the pageantry. The pageantry is like, it's addictive. It's attractive.
And I remember, this is the difference between our upbringings, is that people saw you and like your desire to like kind of like perform, and they were like, oh, this guy is going to be a performer. My mom saw my desire to perform and was like, you're going to be a great priest. She told me. She was like, you're going to be a fabulous priest. And then as soon as I started doing stand-up, she's like, but you're not interested in, seminary?
Really, still?
Yeah.
Really?
Her only goal for me my entire life was to go to heaven. That was the only thing, I swear to God. I was like, Mom, like, should I go to college? She's like, go to heaven. Like, that's like the only thing she wanted. So she was like, be a priest. That's all you should do. So now I feel like I'm using my gifts that God gave me to be a priest to fucking tell dick jokes.
And I'm fine with that, because the bad news for your mom is there's no heaven.
Mom, if you're listening, that we're gonna edit that.
Well, it's funny. I sometimes I did the show up at my mom, and I joke about the fact that I don't believe that there's a heaven. People are fine with the joke, but like a lot of people don't want to be hearing that. And I
don't want to hear that.
I'm fine with people that believe in heaven. Mm-hmm.
But.
No, as I say in my show, I say the one thing I know for sure is that we don't know. We're all guessing. Pick a guess, whichever one works for you, and one day we'll know.
Yeah. And your guess is just like, probably not.
My guess is that it's the end of The Sopranos.
Just black screen.
Yeah, no music, no journey. No journey comes on, no credits. Yeah. I just think that's why I don't want to spoiler alert, but. That's why, in the end, as I got older, I started to think that actually that was a genius ending, because actually it 100% represents my belief in death.
That's actually cool. I never saw it that way.
Oh yeah, that's how I came to see it that way. Actually, not originally, and I didn't watch The Sopranos till after, so I wasn't part of that, like, the great disappointment of like, what the fuck? Because I watched it way later and I knew that was coming. And
yeah, dude, I still haven't watched it. There's so many amazing shows that I'm like catching up on. Like Sopranos is one, like, I don't even know, like The Wire. Breaking
The Wire,
Bad.
yeah, The Wire, Sopranos, Breaking Bad. Those are the three that I feel like kind of changed TV. They're worth a shot. They're worth watching. And even sometimes, like, there may be parts of The Sopranos now or The Wire, maybe even Breaking Bad, where you go like, oh, that's a bit, dated. Yeah. But like at the time, it was untouchable.
Can you explain, just for any of the people listening, your kind of like come up, your journey, like coming from like being born in London, growing up in New York, moving back to Ireland? Like, what are the beats of the early parts?
The London beat is like, it's like a unnecessary beat. My parents happened to be living there. I was born, they took me home within 4 weeks, you know? Like I was born November 12th. My first Christmas was in Flushing, Queens, 1975. So I have no connection to London other than my birth happened there. Then grew up in Queens. I was a Queens kid and whatever, typical kid. But at 14, I flunked out of St. Francis Prep.
Wait, why?
Just like no interest. I mean, there was a little bit of bullying going on. I had sort of fallen.
You were bullying kids?
I fell afoul of the strongly backed Italian Americans in St. Francis Prep.
Oh, really?
At the peak of the Teflon Don era. And so anyway, I had some stresses, but I also had my own demons going on. And I just literally had no interest in school.
You didn't like it?
I just suddenly like, I think in modern times, they would say that I was suffering with like severe anxiety.
Oh.
I follow this guy on Instagram who's actually an autistic comedian, and he just does memes for us. He does memes for comedians.
That's awesome.
It's all, and so he does one of those memes where somebody's making like a face like, really? And it says, when the comedian says he's not autistic. So
yeah.
I have no doubt that a lot of us are on the spectrum.
Yeah, autistic comedian is a little redundant, I think.
Yeah, like on the spectrum, I fine. But no, but at the time, whatever. I was just dealing with all my demons. I was drinking a lot. And
at 14?
I started drinking at 12.
Wow.
Just, again, not because I was any great rebel. I just was the youngest of my neighborhood crew. Joe Lane was the oldest. He was when I was 12, he was 17, but we were close. And then I was the youngest. Everyone younger than me was in like the next crew.
And he was hanging with you?
Me and Joe, yeah, he's still my buddy to this day,
Really?
So he was 17. The majority of that crew was 16, and I was 12. But we were all buddies, neighborhood kids growing up playing wiffle ball. So when they started becoming like proper adolescents, I just tagged along.
Yeah.
So I started drinking at 12 with them.
Smoking cigs, the whole deal.
I wasn't big into smoking cigarettes because my parents smoked and I hated it. But I loved booze. Because, whatever. I think I was actually quite tortured in my youth, but people don't talk about and I'm conflicted now about how much we talk about it because I don't know how much talking about it would have helped me or not. But anyway, at the time I was tortured, but I didn't know that. But I do remember that when I got drunk for the first time, I remember thinking at 12, finally, like relief. I felt relief, real relief. And it's even at that young, and I know it sounds like I'm going back in time and I'm writing this perfect moment, but because I remember the tree that I was looking at. I can remember the tree that I was looking at in the corner of 47th Avenue, 188th Street, and looking at the tree and just feeling peace for and I was aware that normally it wasn't peaceful. Subconsciously.
And where was this, like, the discontentment? Was it from, like, street life, or was it, like,
no,
from home?
It was from home,
Oh, really?
Just anxiety at home, stress, my mother was very, like, a lot of anxiety. But, none of these labels existed. I just knew that myself, and if you talk to my brothers, they will agree, like, we were stressed.
Yeah, we just call it being Irish.
Yeah.
That's just what it is.
Yeah, a lot of unnecessary stress, drama for no reason,
Of course.
And I've had the full journey with my mom, so I'm comfortable talking about it now. But at the time, I didn't know that we were odd. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just remember thinking it felt good. The relief felt good.
Yeah.
So anyway, by the time I was 14, I was drinking quite a lot. Drink on my own, and needless to say, my grades. The joke in my show, I say I got kicked out of school because I had a problem with alcohol, and my mother had this idea to send me to Ireland of all places, which is, it's a joke. It's not really true. The truth was I flunked out of St. Francis Prep for numerous things that were going on. And I was doing like graffiti, and I was going out with this girl, and I was like obsessed with her. So all my focus was not on school.
Yeah.
Were
you ever drunk in school?
I never actually went to school drunk. The very last day of St. Francis Prep, I smoked weed for the first time with my buddy PJ. and skipped first period and went in high. But the first time you smoke weed, I didn't even know what high was. I wasn't aware of being high. I actually it took me a long time of smoking weed to really be aware of being high. Did you have that experience?
Yeah, the first time I smoked weed, it felt like drunk adjacent. I was like, this is like if alcohol studied abroad. It was like a weird kind of sophisticated drunkenness, I guess.
And weed never really did it for me.
Even
from 12 to 19, I drank and used drugs, but weed was never my jam. Even being super stoned, I never felt relief like I felt from booze and other things.
That's a paranoid thing though, to go to school high for the first time and try to be in math class.
But it was the last day, so it was irrelevant.
Yeah, I guess the last day is kind of chill.
It was irrelevant, and it was just a fun thing to do with him. And he's still my best friend to this day. In fact, he picked me up after this stupid ski accident that I had. He was the one that picked me up from the airport. So I know him since I'm 2 years old. He's still one of my closest friends. But anyway, needless to say, I flunked out of school, and my mother was fucking mad stressed, man. Really thought that I was about to really go down a bad road. And I had some family, distant family members that had a tough ride, older than me. So that was on her mind. And she really thought that I was going to become a crackhead. Her own parents were bad alcoholics. She stopped drinking. My dad was an alcoholic. So she just basically was like, there's only one way this is going.
Yeah.
So a cousin of mine was visiting from Ireland, and she said to me, because I was doing summer school and she was helping me with my summer school. She was older than me, Fiona. And she was like, why don't you go to boarding school in Ireland? Just a random thing that she said, sitting with me doing math homework at my kitchen table. And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, get the fuck out of here, because I was so unhappy.
Wow.
And so I actually said to my mom and my father, why don't I go to Ireland? And they kind of laughed at me. But then Fiona talked to her dad, and suddenly the ball was set in motion, and it all turned out to be cheap and doable. And 6 weeks later, I went to Ireland.
Wow.
It wasn't any great, long preparation. It was very random.
That's really cool.
So I went to boarding school in Ireland when I was 14.
Did you like it? Was that relief?
I loved it, man. Ireland saved me.
Really?
It didn't save me from booze long term, but in the short term, Ireland saved my education. It gave me my confidence back. I had this shitty first year in school. It's fucking I fell out with these Italian guys. One of them ended up turning out to be obsessed with the girl I was going out with, and so I fell foul with this. So all my confidence went to the floor.
Yeah.
And then I'm in Ireland. I'm unique. All these Irish guys were awesome. It was all boys school, and I don't think 100% that all boys school is the way to go, but for me,
it's
suited
awesome.
me.
All boys schools are awesome. I went to one when I did a semester in Paris, in France, when I was in high school. I just wanted to go abroad, and I thought it would just be cool. And my dad was kind of going back and forth, so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I went to an all boys school for probably 3-4 months, and I loved it. There's something about dudes when there's no women around.
Yeah, it's fun, bro.
It's there's no expectation. People aren't posturing.
Yeah, you're not showing off.
Yeah,
there's no competition.
Yeah.
Any of the competition stuff is easy to expel. Fucking sports, bit of jostling, bit of wrestling.
No,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
There's wrestling. There's still fights and shit, but it's not, I don't know. There's
it's different.
Something
it's different.
about
For me, it was necessary because I was easily distracted. I was obsessed with, I loved female attention. And suddenly I was in you're talking about a culture clash. I went from Queens, New York, St. Francis Prep. Girls are wearing fucking short skirts. We were way advanced. I'd already lost my virginity. I was going out with that girl. I lost my virginity when I was 14 before I went to Ireland. And suddenly I'm in the same age group in Ireland was not having the same life. Rural boarding school. Half of these guys were farmers, kids, and it was a real eye opener. But it was great for me to just step away from drinking at 12 and smoking weed and doing graffiti. Suddenly I'm just supervised study for 3 hours and having fun with these Irish dudes. And I loved it.
Did you like school at that point? Did you like learning?
Then I did. When I went to Ireland, I did. You know what? I always say Irish history saved my education because, when you're Irish American, and we were very Irish American, marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, loved the IRA. I joke in Ireland, because in Ireland, the IRA was much more complicated.
Yeah.
But in Irish America, the IRA was not complicated.
Right, there's distance.
We were up the Ra. My mother was very heavily Republican, very involved in, Northern Irish stuff, And so we'd march with County Down. And so when I got to Ireland, I just thought I was Irish. And Irish people were like, you're not. You're American.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember, but America wasn't an identity. In Queens is very culturally diverse. So when I say, what are you? And they would say they're American. I'd be like, what do you mean? There's no such thing as an American.
Yeah.
Like, what are you?
Yeah. Are you Dominican? Are you Puerto Rican?
Yeah, exactly. Are you Irish, German?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a Polish, German mix, whatever.
Yeah.
So like we would literally say there's no such thing as an American. I remember we used to say that in Queens.
That's so funny.
You know, in that like America was your like your passport, but your identity was
a different thing. It's where your parents came from. It was what
our
you
neighborhood
did.
was mostly Irish, Italian, German. There was a few Latinos, but like it wasn't. The neighborhood was very white, Catholic.
Yeah.
You know, and some Jewish kids from Fresh Meadows, right? So anyway, I'm digressing, but so I was very confident that I was Irish. You know, and then I went to Ireland. They were like, "You're American," and I'd never really been, you know, I'd never really had to be like, "Oh shit, I'm not Irish." So, and then I remember I was in this civics class, they call it, which is just like it's like a nothing class where you just talk about like life, and you know, it's not even like a real, you don't get a test on it, you know, and he gave us all these dates, and all the dates were like significant Irish historical events, and one of them was 1916, Easter 1916, which if you're Irish is like the moment that it all changed.
Yeah.
Everything changes because of the 1916 Rising. It's one of the most important events in Irish history. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
I had never heard of it. And that was the beginning of that year. And then the end of that year, I had to take the state exam, because at the end of 3 years in Ireland, you take the intercert, which is now called the junior cert. So it's like a big deal in Irish education. And I didn't know anything about Irish history, and I became obsessed. Because when you learn Irish history from the beginning, it's like you've never seen The Sopranos.
Right.
People probably heard you say that, and they're like, oh man, I would love to fucking watch Sopranos from the beginning and not know.
So you got
But that's what Irish history is like.
All of Ireland from the top at like 15 years old.
Irish history is like The Sopranos.
Wow.
It's fucking dramatic.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
Yeah.
You know? And the English were horrible, and there's a lot of death, and I was fucking going through Irish history like The Wire, you know?
Yeah, well, it is a story of struggle, right? Like, it
Yeah.
is literally a story of like, yo, everyone's against us. Fuck everyone.
They keep
We're gonna
coming.
Yeah, we're gonna keep on fighting.
Fucking the fucking Vikings and then the Normans, and they kept coming. But anyway, the Irish Republican history, like the Irish history of how Ireland became a republic, is fucking fascinating. So I had to learn all of that, and I was obsessed.
That's cool.
And that made all my other subjects do better as well, because I just understood that you fucking get the knowledge, you absorb it, and then you get an opinion on it.
You
and
learn
then you
how to learn.
regurgitate it onto a piece of paper. So suddenly I actually cared about learning.
That's interesting, because like so much of your stand-up, like all the things you've done, like, you've done a bunch of things that are very much like immersive learning. Like
Yes.
going to China.
But that was kind of an accident.
Learning Mandarin, like even learning like the traditional language of Ireland, like Gaelic, right?
Gaeilge, yeah.
Yeah, garlic. Why they call it garlic, right?
Some say Gaelic. Gaelic is the northern way, and then Gaeilge is the way that most of the Irish would say it. In Gaeilge is because Irish people say Irish in English, because Gaeilge is actually Irish in English, and then Scots Gaelic is the Scottish dialect. But Irish people in English say Irish, because that's what it is. It's the Irish language. You know? But then when you say Irish here, people go, Irish? You mean like an Irish accent? You know, but that's okay. That's just a cultural misunderstanding.
But you grow up not liking school, and then you learn all these foreign languages and immerse yourself in cultures and learn foreign cultures. Like that to me seems sort of antithetical to each other.
Well, I didn't know I was into learning. And coming to Ireland first was the first thing, history, because I ended up doing history in college. So history, realizing how into history I was what happened from coming to Ireland. The immersive thing, you know, because I got into stand-up when I was in college, but the immersive thing was also an accident, which is a little bit connected to coming to Ireland as an outsider and having to assimilate, right? So, like, I even called one of my stand-up tours Fitting In, because basically, like, you don't realize, but you're learning all these skills on how to fit in. Because I went to Ireland on my own. I didn't go to Ireland with my parents.
Right, no
I'm
siblings.
a 14-year-old Queens kid, you know, staying with my cousin, and then suddenly I'm in a rural boarding school. So you learn how to assimilate, you know, and you absorb all that stuff. So then the first real television show I ever did was about living on minimum wage, like working minimum wage jobs, 4 jobs, 1 month apiece, and doing an immersive documentary and stand-up about that experience. Now, that wasn't my idea. That idea came from a woman that had been working in the UK and then got a job in Irish TV. She pitched the idea to me based on a book called Nickel and Dimed by Barbara Ehrenreich, which was a great read, and I happened to have read it. So she was like, have you read the book? I was like, oh my God, I have. And she was like, I think you'll be the guy. I want to do this. And I was like, fucking awesome. So that the idea of immersion did not come from me. So the fact that you bring that up, like, oh, then you become this guy that likes to immerse himself, that was an accident, like a fortuitous moment of.
But you chose to do it.
Yes,
and you became great at it.
But I was good at it because of the experience that I had of coming from another culture and assimilating into Ireland. So then I was good at going into this Abracadabra was the first job. I worked in a kebab shop called Abracadabra. And I worked on the wage, but also that episode actually wasn't really about the money. That episode really came about the way that people were being treated, particularly new immigrants to Ireland. Ireland had just started having immigration. And there was these Chinese people working with me, and they got treated like shit, actually, by drunken people coming in, because it's a kebab place. The main business is people coming out of the clubs at 2 a.m. and getting fast food. Yeah. And it was chaotic. And it was funny, but it was kind of hard hitting because it really was a bit of a negative mirror to Irish society. But, but a huge percentage of the population were willing to see that and accept it as entertainment, but also like eye-opening. But again, all that fitting in and connecting with them was a skill that I had learned from coming to Ireland.
Wow.
But I don't want to seem like I was cynical, like, I'm going to manipulate these people into taking part in my documentary. I don't mean it that way. I mean, it was authentic.
Right, yeah, of course. Yeah, it's just what you lived.
Yeah, but it comes across. Like when I made that series, I wrote stand-up about the immersion, but the narration is done through the stand-up. So there's no like, hi, there's no my voice coming through being like, I started the job today. There's me doing jokes about starting the job, and then it goes to the situation, which was like a narrative tool.
Was there an aversion to your New York energy in Ireland?
No, stand-up wise, never. I mean, by some people in that, like, not everyone's going to love you.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
But I guess in just like everyday life, I guess stand-up people can see as a performance and be like, oh, this guy is performing. And so the character of, being a New Yorker is more palatable probably. But I just meant like an everyday conversation. Like if you're just at a pub talking to someone.
No, I think people thought I was loud when I first got there. Like I definitely got less loud. My cousin Cormac, he was my older cousin. He was 17 when I came, and he became like my older brother. And he was great for me. Like he was one of my closest friends those first couple of years in Ireland. And we were on a par. I was 14, but I was already drinking. Like I was into the same shit he was into, but I wasn't allowed. My cousins actually were quite strict. That was another thing that saved me. Actually, I stayed with my cousins at the weekend. And they were strict, man. They made me study, and they didn't let me go out. And they were right. I needed that.
You weren't rebellious, though. Like you weren't.
Well,
like,
I couldn't. I did eventually rebel.
Were you angry at that time? Like, hey, you can't go out. You can't talk to these girls. Were you ever like, fuck? Like,
honestly, for a period of time, no. I started breaking out again when I had settled into Ireland. So the latter half of my second year in Ireland, my demons began to rise again. But that didn't come straight away. Anyway, my cousin Cormac, I remember we were in the kitchen one morning, and he was just like, why do you have to speak so loud? We're not that loud here. He shamed me into lowering my voice.
That's funny. Well, it's good. Okay, New Yorkers are loud.
They're loud. And still to this day, I notice it, like when I'm in the Delta Lounge or like at a fucking restaurant, I'm just like, dude, the whole fucking Delta Lounge doesn't need to know about your dumb fucking business. Americans are loud. Americans are not, and again, I say this as an American, but part of me changed is like when I'm on the phone, I speak softly, and like I am aware of when people can hear my conversation too much. And that came from Ireland.
Well, you got shamed into, which is good.
I got shamed, and like, because I don't like being in a restaurant and like totally hearing other people's conversations. And I'm not a killjoy, but that is definitely something that got shamed out of me. I'm not as loud.
Yeah. But
I will say that I can be a little bit bitter because Father Butler, who was a fucking asshole.
Is the Irish guy?
He was my dean, not a pedophile. There were that shit went down in my school, but we won't get into that. But Father Butler wasn't that, okay? But he was angry, very angry man, and still gave the strap. You know that I still got the strap when I went to boarding school in Ireland. Yeah.
Like if you fucked up, it was literally like boom, like on your hands.
I'll give you an example. Like in study hall one day, I ripped a fucking, prize-winning fart, which in your boys' boarding school farting is a currency. And I really, I probably had IBS, but the IBS was good for me because I really could rip like really loud ones.
Yeah, just natural talent. Michael Jordan level. Like,
I'm the Michael Jordan of farts.
Just
and farts are always funny, and debate me if you want, but farts are funny, right? So anyway, I ripped like a fucking like a prize winner, to the point where the teacher who was over supervised study got pissed off at me because I got a round of applause.
Literally.
The whole study, and the whole study hall is not just people in my year, it's all the boarders.
Yeah.
Because there was about 180 boarders. The full school also had day students, but there was about 180 boarders. And I got a round of applause from 180 people, and the teacher was pissed off. So he put me in the front on my knees, right? And I could hear fucking Butler's shoes coming down the hall, the sound of shoes on the floor. And I was like, bollocks. And he saw me and he goes, right, I'll be back. And he went and he got the fucking leather welt that he had. And he gave me 2 on each hand in front of everybody. And then I was able to sit back down.
Damn.
Old school.
Did it stop you though?
No, but come on.
This is the Irish mentality.
They fucked me up. They gave me a round of applause.
That's what I'm saying. They try to stop you from farting. You're like, nope.
No, but anyway, the reason why I bring up Butler is I was bitter because in my first Irish special, I opened it up because Butler used to always say to me, he used to call me a stupid, loud-mouthed American. And he would always say that one of these days, this big mouth is going to get you in trouble. Because he didn't like the fact that I was like a jokester.
Yeah.
And I actually got on fine with him because he was like that with everybody. But he always fucking told me that I was a loudmouth and that it was going to get me in trouble. So I opened my first special and fucking sold out Vicar Street in Dublin. And I said, Father Butler always told me that my big mouth was going to get me in trouble. Well, how's that fucking working out now, Father Butler?
Did he see it?
He hates me. I know that. I've heard from people that still see him, that he fucking hates me.
I did not expect. I was expecting you to be like, yeah, actually, we grabbed a pint after the thing. He was there. He came on
hates
stage
me because who knows? I don't think he wants to admit that he was angry and he took it out on us.
Yeah.
But he did. I mean, at times it was pretty heavy.
I'm curious. The time that you were there, I don't want to be rude as far as age here, but how close was this to the Troubles?
Oh, they were going on at the time. So I got there in 1990.
Okay, yeah.
So there was a few years left, but that was not, I have to tell you that was not a presence in my Irish life.
Oh, really?
In fact, the Troubles was more of a presence in my life in America, where people were avidly Republican and very aware of it. And we marched for County Down. And my mother was in fact, my dad died and we sold the house in 2015. So I was cleaning out the house and I found there was drums from the marching band from the St. Patrick's Day Parade for County Down.
Oh, that's cool.
And one of the bumper stickers on the drum said 26 plus 6 equals 1, which is very provisional IRA propaganda, right? And then the other one was get the Brits out of Ireland on the drum. That was the atmosphere we grew up in before I went to Ireland. But that was not the atmosphere in Ireland. And obviously when you're in Ireland, you're exposed to the Irish media, which was definitely very critical of the IRA, and then the British media. In Ireland, you basically got British TV.
Right.
Anyway, so the British media obviously very critical of the IRA. So suddenly I was in a less pro-IRA atmosphere, and that was good for me because first of all, I became obsessed with learning about the IRA because I used to love debating Irish people about why they were wrong. But also, I also had to accept that some of this violence was probably unnecessary and horrific.
Right, but this is all happening in Belfast.
It's all north, nothing to do with me. Now, all my mother's first cousins, my mother's uncle was still alive. So I would go up to County Down. I visited them Easter of 1991. That was the first time I went to the north. So, I saw the checkpoints and I had soldiers pull us over, but I didn't experience any other than I would see the armored cars and think it was cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool to be in a quote unquote war zone.
Right.
And I crossed the border and I thought wow, this is the border.
Yeah.
But that didn't last too long. I mean, the Good Friday Agreement was 1995. That was the end of it. So very soon after I arrived, there was an IRA ceasefire, and then the ceasefire ended when they blew up Canary Wharf. That was probably the biggest event. The IRA blew up Canary Wharf, and then after the Good Friday Agreement, shoot off of the IRA had a horrible bomb in Omagh. That was really the last major violent event, and and then that was it. Then
you were in a little oasis at this boarding school.
Yeah, that wasn't. I think I was already in college actually when the Omagh. I think Omagh bombing was 1997. But anyway, there wasn't a big presence in my life except for my own desire to know about it and understand it, because I didn't know about how that all started.
And
why
all these Irish kids are raised with it. They're kind of like I'm immune to it, I'm assuming. And you're coming here being like, wait, there's a war happening in this country that I'm now living in, and you just get to download all of it. Like, it's all so interesting.
Download. We weren't downloading.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess download it proverbially in your brain.
I got the books, and I was obsessed. And I had conversations. You know, there was a seminary connected to our school, coincidentally enough. And the school musicals and plays, you would do them with the seminarians. And some of those guys they were older than me, but they were very smart. And I remember having like some pretty like interesting debates with them. I was definitely like absorbing information. But like, it's so funny how I thought I was so into the North and the IRA and all that, but I was so unaware of the division that in 1986, Mexico 86, the World Cup in 1986, Northern Ireland was in that, you know?
Oh, wow.
And I didn't understand why I wasn't supposed to root for them.
Right, they're Irish.
Yeah, but it turns out it's like sectarian, right? Like,
exactly.
Generally Catholics, largely, not wholly, but largely Catholics do not support that team. They support the Republic of Ireland. But I was like oblivious. And here's me thinking that I'm like this little provo, and I actually had no idea. Somebody eventually said to me like, "Oh no, we don't support them." I was like, "Why? It's Northern Ireland. That's where my grandfather's from. My grandfather's from County Down." But then later on I understood. But at the time I was clueless.
Now the thing I love about boarding school, just when you get a bunch of guys together and you're all young, there's nothing to do, you find awesome shit to do. Awesome things will happen. Fight clubs, like you'll find like a way to like hurt each other in some capacity. Were there anything that you guys did at the boarding school? Like just like general shenanigans.
I mean,
you're like, oh, this was an awesome day.
I mean, nothing too crazy, honestly. I mean, there was a lot of cool games. You know, again, I didn't know anything about Irish sports, so my school was a big hurling school.
Yeah, can you explain hurling? I actually don't understand how this game works.
I mean, the best comparison to immediately get an idea is lacrosse, right? So imagine lacrosse with no nets, but just a wooden plank, basically, that is like a flattened version of a baseball bat. And then a ball, which is like a smaller than a baseball and like a little bit lighter, so you can catch it with your bare hand. But you cannot run. You can't run with the ball in your hand for more than 3 steps, so you have to put it onto this flat surface of the hurl. You can hand pass and you can hit it, but you can. In the net is a goal for 3 points, but there's also a bar like the net, like the bar of a American football, and over the bar is for 1 point, and it's 2 35-minute halves, and it's a very skilled game. It's a very fast game. And
Do you like it?
I love it.
Really?
One of my favorite games to watch. But I had never held a hurl in my life before I went to Ireland, and then I went to a very hurling boarding school, very Gaelic Athletic Association that also has associations with Irish independence. You know, that was all part of the independence movement. So I'm in this like charged up sporting atmosphere. So there was a lot of different games we played with hurling, and I loved all that shit.
That's cool.
Stupid, like not actual hurling games. Organizing a hurling game can be complicated, but there was like different games, like, you know, trying to hit a ball a certain distance. That we used to call it walls, and so we used to play all those games. Then sometimes we would sneak into town. Then we got into girls. You know, sometimes if like the Loretto was the girls,
like the sister school,
the nuns' school, and like if they had a musical. So the other fucked up thing about this crazy Catholic society was the Loretto and St. Peter's, they wouldn't let us do the musicals together. So in St. Peter's, the younger kids dressed up as women, and in Loretto, the older girls dressed up as men. It's
literally like Shakespearean, like playtime.
Yes,
that's so funny.
So we were allowed to. we were always be allowed to go to the Loretto musical.
Oh, that's so
But
funny.
the whole mission was, at the break of the intermission of the musical, was to just try to fucking meet somebody.
Find a woman
and like
to a girl.
Just make out with them or anything, you know.
Dressed as a guy.
So no, I wasn't in. We were just watching.
But you find a girl that's dressed up as a dude, and you're like, fine, this is what I'm looking for. This
was just girls, like, you know, like around, not the ones in the show.
That's so funny though.
You know, so
Wait,
then
so did you do a play?
I did numerous plays.
Did you dress as a girl in the play?
No, I was always big, so I was always a guy.
Damn.
But the first years and second years we dressed up as women.
That's so funny.
We did Paint Your Wagon.
What is that?
Hand Me Down That Can of Beans. So Clint Eastwood did the movie. If you ever
really? No,
did Paint Your Wagon. We did Percy French, The Golden Years.
There's something so funny about like a traditionally conservative Catholic like society and being like, yeah, you guys can dress as chicks. Like that would be
That's the whole
front page conservative news.
Well, God forbid we should interact with women. It's so weird. The whole thing is so fucking strange.
You guys can cross-dress.
Just the concept of like, we can't let these teenage boys and these teenage girls do something together. So let's dress boys up as women.
That's so
But like,
funny.
let's face it, when it comes to sexuality, these guys were warped. You know? Anyway, like especially St. Peter's. I mean, St. Peter's was, Google that shit. It was the beginning of the end of the Catholic Church. All started at my boarding school, man. The Ferns Report. Google it. I don't want to get into it because it's too dark, but I'm telling your listeners right now, Google the Ferns Report. I went to school. That was my principal. That guy, one of the three main protagonists of the Ferns Report was my principal. Father Collins went to jail. He's dead now. So anyway,
whoa.
But there was all that oddness going on because this was before the awareness of that, right? So the Catholic Church was still
free reign.
Reigned supreme in Ireland. So this kind of oddness wasn't even questioned.
Wow.
So that would be the other thing we'd get up to. Try to meet a girl. Like when I got a little older, 15, 16, 17, try to meet a girl. Then I'd sneak into town or I'd tell Father Bill, you were allowed to go into town. Say, Father Bill, I'm going into town. You had to be back for tea, which was like dinner. You had to be back for tea at 5:30. So then I would try to go in, meet up with some girl. I remember like one time, like, making out with this girl. I won't name her. We're still friends, actually, but making out with this girl in like an abandoned, like a ruin of a church. It's just so exciting, right? Just making out with somebody. So fucking cool. And then it was like, damn, I got to go back. She's going back to her fucking family. I was going back to boarding school.
Oh, wow. Just in a pew somewhere, just in an old church?
No, like literally like a ruin. Like the ground was like rocks.
So romantic, though.
It's cool, man. It was a medieval church. It was a medieval ruin.
Sounds like a
That's
romance
the difference
novel.
between Ireland and America. You can fool around in a medieval ruin.
What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because it's 2024, and it's time to talk about something important. When you are seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Yes, that's right. The world is a crazy place, and one person's negligence can result in another's settlement. And that's why I got to talk to you about Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and over 1,000 lawyers. Yes, these are the big boys. You know them, you see their billboards all over the world. If you ever drove down I-90 from Florida to New York, I'm telling you, you've seen the billboards, all right? Have you ever watched a UFC fight? You've seen them right on the banner. I'm telling you, these are the biggest guys in the game, all right? With over $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. The annoying thing with most attorneys is that in order to submit a claim, you got to call them up, you got to talk to their people, you got to go back and forth on emails, you got to hope that they see it. They might charge you just to even look at their claim. Here's the cool thing with Morgan & Morgan. With 8 clicks or less, you can submit a claim and one of their licensed attorneys will take a look at it and get back to you. It's that easy. It's like ordering something off Amazon. It's just a couple clicks. You can submit your claim very easily and cheap. Yeah, how about $0? That's how much it costs to submit a claim with Morgan & Morgan. Extremely easy, no fee required. So, if you are ever injured, you can go check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. That's right, unless they win for you. Unless they fight and get you compensation, you're not paying a single dollar. That's a pretty good deal. So, for more information, go to forthepeople.com/Gagnon. That's correct, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, that's pound 529 from your cell phone. That's for the people, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. This is a paid advertisement. Now let's get back to the show after this short disclaimer. So when I went with my family, we went to Scotland, we went to this place called Newgrange. Have you ever heard of this?
In Ireland?
Is it in Ireland?
Ireland and Newgrange. That's the summer solstice you're talking about.
Oh yeah, it's in Ireland.
Yeah, that's Ireland. That's
wow.
County Meath.
Oh yeah. So we went there.
Yeah.
And we went inside, and it was so funny. Like this is like this old historical, like it's a mound effectively, but it's kind of like a pyramid. Like it's an old ancient like I don't even know, ritual like house, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
I can't remember, is it the Druids or what? But I mean, it's essentially it's pre-Christian.
And the front wall faces, it might be like the oldest historical site, like that's still around, I think. That's what they were telling us. And the front door basically faces the sun during the winter solstice.
The winter and the summer solstice.
Yeah. So
that's always a big event.
Right when it comes up, like people buy tickets, it's a whole thing. And as we're going inside, the woman told us, she was like, so unfortunately, this didn't become a national heritage site until, the 80s or 90s. So there's a lot of graffiti. And we're going inside, and I'm expecting it to be like 1960s, like, fucking Sex Pistols shit. Like, that's what I'm anticipating. So we go inside, and it says, like, John and Susie, lovers forever. 1812.
Wow.
I was like, what? That's the graffiti? Is other history? And they were like, yeah. And then like she was telling us, she was like, yeah, actually my grandma used to like come here and like play when they were kids. And it was just like an abandoned old shit that they had that people would just go to. And I was like, wow, that is a different experience than being in America. The idea that you could just go play in a ruin is like, what?
Yeah. I even used to, when I used to walk to college from where I lived in Cork, I used to cut through an old British Army graveyard, and all the graves are from like the 1800s.
It's insane. It's absolutely.
But that's a different. That's one of the big differences. Europe in general is just the history. You can't avoid it. It's easy to avoid the history here.
I don't want to fast forward too much, but I'm so curious about the China thing.
Okay.
Like that's such an amazing part of your special, which is awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I've really, really enjoyed it. I'd only seen you do stand-up a couple times, like just like around the cellar, just like popping in, like watching you. The special is phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed it.
I mean, I kind of cheated because it is a little bit of it's 50% like a greatest hits. You know?
Really?
Well, like in that, like I've recorded a lot of those bits before, but they've just all gotten so much better now that I work in the United States. So since I've been touring in the States, I've just made them all so much better.
But that's smart though, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's fine.
Why are you trying to like reinvent when you have all this great shit?
That nobody's seen.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the thing, nobody had seen.
This all goes out overseas. You're like, yo, let's just like refine this thing down. But it's
But anyway, I love talking about China, so that's
genuinely great. But you have smartly the opening of the whole special is just you speaking Mandarin.
That was Hannah's idea.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, she was inspired by I think the Shane Gillis YouTube one starts with a bit of crowd work. But we were basically, Homeless Pimp that, he recorded it. And he was basically saying that like intros are pointless. That like actually you got to capture people straight away. So
he's right.
Hannah had come up with the idea of just like open with a bit of crowd work, open with that crowd work.
Yeah.
And then actually the editor, John Sheridan, came up with the ding. So basically it's just like, you're in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's
and because it's a weird thing where I'm suddenly speaking Mandarin with this guy in the crowd, then you automatically go like, this is not a normal show.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, the choice is like brilliant. And like for me,
but when I did the China thing, I never thought that all that material would be so strong in the United States. But actually, it was the thing that made my transition to come in because, just through various parents being sick and different, I started spending more time here after I finished in China.
And so can you explain that to me? You go to China for the explicit purpose of learning Mandarin and to do stand-up in Beijing.
So the quick backstory, those Chinese guys that I worked with in that Abracababra, one of them I became very close with, and I had gone to visit him in China when he was on vacation in 2004. And I spent 4 weeks in China, and that was my first experience with China. Now, I also grew up in Flushing, Queens, so my neighborhood completely became Chinese in my lifetime. And my next door neighbors, I would shovel snow with them when I was visiting from Ireland, and I couldn't speak to them. They didn't speak English. So I did begin to get a little bit of an obsession with learning Mandarin. And then after I went to China, I was really obsessed with learning Mandarin. Then we won't talk about it, but I did make a documentary about learning Irish, right?
Yeah.
Which is relevant because it turned out I was really good at learning languages. So in a year, I learned Irish and I did stand-up in Irish, and that was a very successful series. So after that was done, I break up with my fiance, and suddenly my whole life was different to what I expected it to be. So I was like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. So let's do this in Chinese. Let's fucking go to China and try to do stand-up in Mandarin and tell the world about China through my journey of trying to do stand-up in Mandarin. But it actually that was 2008. I didn't go there till 2013. It took 5 years to finally get somebody to fucking back it. My dad died in the interim, so I did a whole thing with that. So I had like this, right? So anyway, needless to say, the pitch was Irish-American comedian goes to China without a word of Chinese, and he has 1 year living in China to learn enough Mandarin to do stand-up in Mandarin. And everything that happens in between will be part of this journey. And I will also do stand-up in English about my experience in China, which helps, again, to tell the story, which was always that was always the way my series went.
That's awesome.
Was man has experience, does stand-up about it, and we see the experience happening, and hopefully it's entertaining.
So cool. I mean, just as a caveat, like, I would love to see this everywhere. Like,
I did once pitch it to Andrew, because what happened was, after the China series came out, Sharon Horgan, she made Bad Sisters, for example, on Apple, and one of the best actual comedy series, I think, Catastrophe, which is on Hulu. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. she actually had at one stage paired up with me trying to get the Arabic version of the China series, but I didn't want to do it just for Irish TV again because the budgets were so small. Yeah. I wanted it to be like an international thing because I feel like it has, the flavor of, but we couldn't get it off the ground. So a couple of years later, when I was like frustrated with it, I said to Andrew, like, do you think, I actually pitched him the Arabic thing, but he was just beginning his, like, all his stuff was just starting to kick off. So it was awesome. There was just like a weird, but we had a good conversation about it.
That's like a dream of mine personally. Like my favorite thing to do, and I think this comes from my dad. My dad worked in Europe so much. Like he would come home after like a week or two doing a business trip and be like, Dutch people are like this. And he'll do like a Dutch accent and explain what the Dutch like bluntness, or he'd be like, Spanish people are like this. And he would explain all of these different cultures. And I just thought it was so funny. And it really informed a lot of like the things I like about stand-up is like exploring culture, understanding people.
Yes.
And all of those things to me are like my favorite. I really liked like Russell Peters when I was a kid because he would just explain the difference between North and South Indians. I was like, this is so interesting.
Yes.
And it's all like obviously the humanity is the same across the world no matter where you go, but the cultural little affects like add flavor and spice to who a human is. I'm obsessed with it. And
he doesn't get enough credit, by the way, for how good he was at observing Chinese stuff. Like after I lived in China and I actually watched his stuff about China, I was like, God damn.
He's I think genuinely one of the most astute observers of culture, like,
and underrated in the comedy world. Like I don't think people they think somehow what he did was easy.
No, it's
annoying.
Extremely difficult. It's extreme, like the nuanced stuff, because he's not doing like hack shit. He's like, hey, this is like the inflection of the accent of like Tamil versus Hindi. It's like,
yes.
What? And obviously he's an Indian dude, but he didn't live in India. Like he's just observing these things just from being there. It's like so cool.
So with China,
but I love it. I just think it's so fun.
The second time I visited was 2009. That was like a little recon trip. I was trying to see if I could get some money from China to make the series. But like the Olympics had happened and like the whole world was starting to really become obsessed with China. So I was really thinking like this people would be into this, to tell the story of China through this way. But like you're still just some white dude going to China in 2013 trying to get them to trust you. So, it takes a while before you go like, oh yeah, this is really happening. Because actually what happened with that series was that like, it really only got good in terms of like the content we were getting when I could actually speak Mandarin. Because before that we were relying on like these like, production company like researchers, but like they're just going to go, oh, today you're going to learn how to do calligraphy, and that's their job, right? You have to get content onto the camera.
Sure.
So, but like that wasn't what we were looking for. But like it's not their job to just understand like what's going on in your head. But once I was able to articulate it myself, then we were really the second half of the series. It gets really good because we're able to really start to do what we want.
It's about the connection.
Yes.
It's about talking to people. It's not about seeing you fucking paint. You know what I mean? Like I want to see you with a guy and have him be surprised that you speak Mandarin or like getting immersed in it. And so that's where I'm like, yeah, that's where it should start.
But also because there was an Irish connection because Leo, the guy from Abracadabra, had in the meantime moved back to China. So Leo actually is a big part of the series because
he's a translator.
And
he's a cultural conduit.
He ended up doing the door in my comedy club for years. Like he moved up to Dublin, and so we remained together. So then in China, we started an English language stand-up night, me and him together. So there was this lineage back to my initial series, but that only mattered to Irish people, you know what I mean? But like it was great because me and Leo, there's elements of it are basically like a buddy journey through China.
Is he a comic as well, Leo?
Nah, he's just a fucking random dude. Now he lives in Fujian. He's married with a kid, and he was always on. Just a guy, never went to college, just was working in Ireland. And we just became buddies, and he's been a big part of my journey. But anyway, that was the China stuff in English was actually pretty funny, which I wasn't expecting. Like for example, like my Irish language stuff in English, like my stuff jokes about the Irish language in English, it doesn't travel. But my jokes about learning Chinese and being in China, it does travel, which is interesting. But that's because people are fascinated by China.
Yeah, and there's also like the Chinese diaspora, I think, maintains a little bit more of like the cultural curiosity. Like I don't know anything about Gaelic really, other than like I saw a clip of Conor McGregor speaking it.
Yeah.
But like what it means to be Irish, I think has like been so infused with American culture that there's less of a curiosity.
Yes.
Whereas like I go to Chinatown and it is Chinese people speaking Mandarin, and I'm like, what is going on? What are they talking about? What are they eating? Like, they've maintained a cultural like insularity that I think makes me more curious. And so to have someone like you be like, oh, this is why they do this. This is why they squat and smoke cigarettes. Like, if you can explain these things, then all of a sudden I'm like, ah. But like, I need a guy like you. You're Irish, and I'm like, oh, I don't need any explanation.
Exactly, that's a very good point. And part of my motivation, one of the things I really wanted to show, because I had already been there twice, was that, number one, Chinese people are really funny, and their sort of stoic appearance, or the sense of like that they're not like, that they're very not interested in you. You know, the way there is this sort of sense of separation, you know? You go to Chinatown, you feel like it's another world.
Yeah.
That is basically just a communication barrier. But actually, when you learn the language and you get to know them, they're fucking hilarious. And I wanted to show that because Western media focuses a lot on the negative aspects of China.
Of course.
Especially these days. But, you know, if you go back to that time, there was still always about human rights and the government. And like, I'm no propagandist for the Communist Party. Like, all that stuff is real. But when that's all you get, you can get too much of a sense of otherness with the people.
You lose the humanity of like, I know, these are funny people. They like to joke about this kind of shit. They love their kids the way you love your kids. Like, they're Chinese people are humans, obviously. Like, but we lose that because we see the government and we're like, oh, China bad.
Yes, and it's good to know about there's some stuff that's totally different, you know, and we showed that and we had some fun with that, and you know, I mean, that's what the series was.
Okay, what else do Americans misunderstand or misconstrue about China and Chinese people?
Well, there's really the cock size varies the same as any other race, you know? Like, I was in the shower and some guys had big ones, some guys had small ones. Wow. So that's a stereotype.
So you can dispel that. There's some guys were hanging.
This fucking, you think Yao Ming has a fucking little dick?
Who knows? Compared to him, you know what I mean? It might look small on him.
Maybe in relative terms.
It might look small on him.
But so that was one. What else? Well, you know, the big thing, which is, this is less about humor, but the real takeaway at the time was like, the family structure is like way more sacred there, you know? And that goes a little bit down to like their Taoist kind of Confucius belief. So the kind of essence of like Chinese values kind of comes like from Confucianism, a little bit of Taoism, Buddhism, but at the heart of that is like hierarchical structure of xiaoxun, which is filial piety. And so they really believe in respecting elders a lot more than we do. Not always a positive, but in general, I would have taken that as a positive of like the respect that people have for their parents and for the elderly more than us. Mm-hmm. And that is a noticeable difference.
That's cool.
But as a result, you find the older people, I think, are happier. And I think that travels over here. Like, because I live downtown, Lower East Side now. I live near Seward Park. And like, you can see that those older people have more of a zest for life. They still feel more part of society than I think the average American older person does. I think. Now, that's my subjective.
No, I think you're right. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I need to tell you about one of my favorite new products in 2024. It's called Zippix. Yes, Zippix is a nicotine-infused toothpick. Now, if you know me, you know I like to indulge in a little bit of nicotine from time to time, okay? That's true. I don't like to smoke it. I don't like to vape it. Obviously, those things are very bad for your lungs. They're bad for your health. They make you feel bad when you work out. Not good. But nicotine on its own has been proven in scientific trials to actually improve neural communication, improve cognitive function, improve sharpness, improve mental clarity. Look it up. It's very, very interesting research. Anyway, back to Zippix. This is a nicotine-infused toothpick, okay? This is probably my new favorite way to get my little kick of nicotine. It's absolutely amazing, and it's great because you can use it anywhere at any time. It's very, very discreet. You just pop it in, and immediately you're getting whatever flavor you've purchased. This one right here, peppermint watermelon. Tastes amazing. They have 6 different flavors. They're all fabulous, and they all do the trick. Zippix is great for a couple reasons. If you're like me and you don't like to smoke or vape, Zippix is probably my favorite way to deliver that nicotine fix right to your body. It feels absolutely amazing. It looks cool. And also on top of that, I sometimes get food caught right in this little tooth right here. I always carry flossers with me. I always carry toothpicks with me. But now I have 2 in 1. Boom. After dinner, I'm getting a little fix and I'm getting food out of my teeth. I mean, that's a win-win right there. 2, it looks cool. It's discreet. While you're driving, you pop a Zippix in. You're feeling good. You're cleaning out your teeth. What do you want more than that? Secondly, if you're someone that maybe does smoke, maybe you do use vapes, maybe you do use cigarettes, you're going on a long flight. You're going to be stuck somewhere. You're going to be at a funeral. You're going to be at a wedding. You're going to be a baby shower for your baby. And you can't be ripping cigs at your own baby's baby shower. I mean, that looks insane. So what are you going to do? Pop a Zippix in. Now you're getting your nicotine fix and you're feeling good. Now, what if you're someone that doesn't even like nicotine? Zippix has something for you as well. They have B12 and caffeine-infused toothpicks if you're not a nicotine user or you're trying to get away from your nicotine habit. That's totally fine. Zippix has helped tens of thousands of customers in leading a way to a healthier lifestyle that, maybe they currently vape or use cigarettes, and they can probably help you too. Make your lungs happy and try Zippix nicotine toothpicks. Ditch the cigarettes, ditch the vape, get a nicotine-infused toothpicks, okay? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to zippixtoothpicks.com today. Get 10% off your first order by using the code Gagnon, Gagnon, at checkout. Your lungs will be glad that you did. You must be 21 years old to order, and I just want to say this as a warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix nicotine toothpicks. Now let's get back to the show. I think you're right. I was actually talking to someone about this just the other day, that I think that the ancient cultures possess more of a respect for the elderly because there's just the wisdom transmutes. Like, it just goes generationally and people like pass on things. Whereas like for me, I don't know anything about my grandparents. Like, a lot of them didn't even make it to America. Like, they stayed in fucking Montreal. Like, there's such a disconnect because everyone that comes here is leaving something. They're leaving something behind. So as a result, I don't go to my grandparents for wisdom. I don't learn anything from them. And then also, as times change in America, we're so open, I think, to like modernity and culture changing. So the wisdom of my grandparents is less valuable. So as a result, I respect them less because they have less to offer me. Whereas I think in ancient cultures, China included, you're able I think there's less of a change culturally, and as a result, you respect the wisdom of your elders, and as a result, you respect your elders. So I just think it like transmutes through ancient cultures.
Now, if I had my way, I would say that in China, there's too much filial piety to the extent that I think sometimes it can stunt your growth as an individual, and you feel that in China. You feel that pressure. So I would like somewhere in the middle. Right. I would like an evolution from the very rigid filial piety that they have in China, but I would absolutely like a retraction from the almost selfish individualism of dismissing the elderly.
Yeah. We're the exact opposite. Yes. But there are ruts of conformity that they fall into where it's like,
and the pressure is immense. And funnily enough, it comes up a lot in the stand-up. When I started getting involved in this like nascent stand-up scene in China, it comes up. You can feel the pressure of, like, people talk a lot about their parents more in Chinese stand-up.
Well, I'm sure also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure every Chinese comic is in some way doing a disservice to their family, at least like either on a practical level or just like on a familial level. I could see their parents being like, "You're going to be a comedian?" Because there's no ancient precedent for being an entertainer.
Especially stand-up is very new.
That's what I'm saying. So I wonder, did you find that with a lot of Chinese comics where they're like, yeah, my parents are a little disappointed? Not on like some Chinese stereotype, like become a doctor type shit, but just like there's no precedent for that in our family heritage.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel that as much. You would feel that more here in the sense of like, I feel like the Tiger Mom / Asian American experience.
Yeah, it's different.
It's almost so odd in China that I didn't feel too many people feeling the pressure from their parents. But what I did notice is that, like, because people always say to me, "Oh, you can't say anything because of the government," and it's like, it's true. Like, you can't do political humor there. But actually, what's just as groundbreaking, and it's hard to see, is people talking very open and honestly about their families and about themselves. That's not traditionally Chinese, to be like open about who you are. So that was fucking groundbreaking. So it's like, hey, let's hold off on the revolution, because it's very easy over here because we're free to say what we want. Right. So we think like, oh, it's not fair. They can't say what they want. And it's like, that's true, but that's like the American / Western point of view. Let's focus on what's actually pretty revolutionary about what they're doing, which is like talking about themselves openly and being critical of their familial upbringing. You
go on stage and say, my dad drinks too much. Everyone's like, oh, wow. It's just like that would
that
be
level of openness. Because if you look at their comedy traditionally, it's very sort of like, it's two-hander Abbott and Costello stuff, but it's like, it's not very personal.
Right.
And stand-up natural, like not all stand-up, but a lot of stand-up is personal.
I find that like Andrew and I, we went to Moscow in 2019 and did stand up there, which was such a cool experience. But it's kind of a similar thing where like it is a very new comedy scene. And the evolution of comedy, it seems like within a society, it really restarts every place from the beginning.
Yes.
Like if you look at early American stand-up, like Borscht Belt, Catskills shit from like, 40s even, like Henny Youngman, it's very much like, kind of hokey.
Yes.
It's sort of one-linery. It's kind of like puns. It's almost like puppetry or like clownery.
And very like China. But it needs to begin there though.
But it's interesting that it always starts, like it doesn't like hand off. Like even if you're inspired by American comedy, like in Russia, all these people were consuming American media. They love Dave Chappelle. They love Louis C.K. They're like, this is what comedy is. But they didn't take the baton and start there. They restart from the very beginning. It'd be like, taking like basketball and importing into China, and they start with like, two-handed bouncing and like, you know what I mean? Like, and just like layups.
Yeah.
Like, but
now, obviously the journey from the restart to like more modern is quick because they have access to a lot. So like obviously those guys, that American stand-up and British stand-up, those two sort of scenes are sort of like the two main veins of like what we know as modern stand-up. But like those evolutions took a long time. I don't think the evolution takes, like I find in the 10 years since I left China, stand-up or tokushow as they call it, they alliterated from talk show.
Oh, it's literally talk show.
Yeah, because like comedy is siju. But they didn't use siju. They took talk show and they call it tokushow. So if you said to them like, "Oh, I do comedy, I do siju," they wouldn't think of stand up.
They would think of a comedy movie.
Yeah, or like sketch or something.
Oh, interesting.
But like if you say tokushow, that's stand up. Like when
hilarious.
you say tokushow, immediately they know what you're talking about.
And is that because they're like getting influence from like late night TV?
Yeah, like when people began to think about what it was like, probably they were seeing videos of like Letterman or like people doing like the Oscars or something
Hilarious.
like that. So in fact, one of the guys that I knew, he was inspired by seeing somebody do something at the Oscars. Anyway, the tokushow from when I was there to now has evolved a lot. And it's not 100% like the same line because the money gets involved and then the way the Chinese entertainment industry works, which is very different to here, gets involved too. And obviously there's not a lot of freedom, so it is complicated, but it has evolved very quickly and has become quite popular since I was there. When I was there, it was like really new, whereas now if I'm like in an Uber and the guy's from China and we start talking, like we'll be like talking, like he'll know a lot about tokushow and he'll know a lot about like guys that I started with that have become famous.
How cool.
Yeah, so like it really has become like somewhat mainstream since I was there. But on the flip side, because of that, there's actually a lot of control of it now, more than when I was there. Like really? A lot, yeah.
What would be like a sanction that would be put on a comedian, or do you have an example?
Well, I give a quick example. Was a buddy of mine was just here, spending some months because he's not happy in China actually because they're cracking down so hard, but he was showing me that like a government like email went around to like all the different groups because stand up there still there's a little bit of collectivism with it, which is like nobody's really an individual. You kind of get like signed into these like groups and they're companies. They're basically content creation companies. So that part sort of like tracks with what's going on here now, except that like you just make content for that company that you're in. And this is not, it's hard to describe because it's so fucking complicated that I don't 100% understand it myself. But let's simplify it, right? So let's say stand-up in America was like stand-up in China. Like you, Andrew, and you guys would have created a company, let's just say Flagrant, and like you would be a Flagrant comic. So you guys would make content for Flagrant. Your shows would be Flagrant shows, and it would be very rare that you would go and do a show for some other company.
Interesting.
Joe Rogan's company.
It becomes a tribe that you kind of create, and then you operate underneath like your tribal identity.
Yeah, and a lot of times people are on like salaries rather than like money for shows. Now, again, can I just put the caveat that I've never fully understood how it worked, so I'm very open to correction on this. But for a basic understanding of the difference, that would be enough.
That's really interesting.
So anyway, all these companies, all these people that are involved in stand-up throughout China, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, they all got the same email about how they need to be very rigid with their content. And like, I didn't see the list. It was in Chinese characters anyway. And my Chinese is good, but it's not good enough to read a government email.
Yeah.
But it was basically like avoid, and just be very conscious of the fact that like, you guys are a problem. So like, don't make it any worse.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and like, there's a lot more control of the media there now than when I was there.
Did the comedians like that? Did they like the sense that there was like a rebelliousness, or are they like were some guys charged up, or did some guys just say, like, you know what, it's not worth it and quit?
I wasn't aware of any deep desire to be rebellious, but it's only natural that some guys. So there's an incident. I'm not going to name any names, right? But this is a real incident that happened. A comedian that I didn't really know, but had blown up in the meantime. But I believe somebody told me that I had met him once, but I don't remember meeting him. But he got very big in China as a 脱口秀演员, as a stand-up comedian. Wasn't famous with something before and got into it. He was a breakout young Chinese guy that did stand-up as we know it. And he did a tour in the States and Canada with one or two other well-known Chinese comedians. And he decided in the States that he was going to speak freely. And I don't even think the video went viral, but a description of what he was talking about went viral in China. And he was wiped from the internet immediately, to the point where my buddy, who was just here, told me that he went to contact him when he heard something was going on. And his WeChat didn't even exist. His WeChat identity was gone. Everything was gone. He doesn't exist anymore. And this is a real thing. You can Google it. But there's not a lot on the internet about it, though.
Wow.
Because it's very Chinese. And actually, I don't know where he is now, but I don't know if he's in hiding or not. So I don't want to like over dramatize, but there was a period of time where people didn't know where he was.
Wow.
And certainly my friend wasn't able to contact him, but his career is over in China because of what he said.
Is wild. And it's not on some like, okay, I understand. This is not like some punk rock like Lenny Bruce, like I'll say fuck and then I'll get arrested and then I'll become a hero.
No.
It's like,
no, because nobody knows now.
Yo, we'll just smother you and you won't exist.
It doesn't exist. No, I don't think he's in, I actually don't, that's all I know, actually. So that story is the limit of my knowledge, but that did happen. And it happened not that long ago, like within the last year.
Wow. Interesting. So the government, to an extent, sees this as a potential issue.
Everything, but they see everything. Do you know that? Wow. So my nickname amongst my Chinese buddies is Lao Bi, because I took the last name B, fourth tone B. I have a joke about it, but that's my family name because I'm Bishop, right? So I just took the BI off of Bishop, and B is a Chinese last name. But the reason why people call me Lao Bi is because actually like a more traditional kind of like Johnny Carson type, hosty type comedian was Bi Fujian, but they call him Lao Bi, and he's famous. You mentioned Lao Bi, people know Lao Bi. So when I got to China, he was huge, and he was the host of the Chunwan, which just happened because it's Chinese New Year. The Chunwan is like the Chinese Spring Festival Gala. It's the most watched show on the planet.
The whole country,
every
billion
year,
people are watching the show.
The most watched show on the planet. Humongous gala for hours. People's careers are made, and it's humongous. And Bi Fujian was the fucking host, Lao Bi. I mean, couldn't get more famous. He did a corporate, while I was there, by the way, I was still there. He did a corporate for some Chinese businessmen and jokingly made fun of Mao Zedong with some song, some old school song. It was like a lighthearted kind of making fun of Mao Zedong and making fun of like the way that you used to have to sing the Mao songs. He's never had a career since. His career, because it went viral, and he has no career for making fun of Mao Zedong.
Wow, not even the current regime, not even the current...
Not even Xi Jinping, whose father was fucking imprisoned by Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
And he was sent down to the countryside. He was, sent, all these kids during the Cultural Revolution were sent down the country. He experienced the horror of the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah, Gigi was like, he was like abused by the people, right? Like,
yeah, like he experienced the nightmare of the Cultural Revolution, right? So he knows in his heart that Mao Zedong was a total failure. But the official government line is that he was 70% good, 30% bad.
Wow.
Right? And for some reason, and I think largely it has to do not so much that the Mao Zedong joke was really bad, but I think at that time, Xi Jinping was actually trying to get rid of prominent entertainers who he considered their entertainment to be a little low. He has like this cultural snobbery. So there was another guy, Zhao Benshan. Zhao Benshan is this like northern Chinese guy. So fucking funny, man. And he was an actor, but like if he had been a stand-up, he would have been like George Carlin, but not like George Carlin, like just like an old legend, you know. And I even watched a couple of his movies and they were incredible. His sketches are like hack and hokey, but like there was just something about him. He was so funny. Zhao Benshan, one of the most famous comedians. And literally in my time in China, suddenly Xi Jinping decided one day, very early in his regime, that like a lot of that stuff was like low. You know, just like low culture, that we're of a higher value than this type of comedy. And his career fucking disappeared too.
Wow.
Zhao Benshan. Now, he wasn't like canceled to the extent of Bi Fujian. But
just suppressed.
Nothing's happened with Zhao Benshan. I don't think he's done anything for 10 years. And he was like, it's hard to just, because I'm just throwing these names at you, but like he's like in his 70s, he's an old guy, but he was just so funny. Like, you know, like especially the more I started to understand Chinese, like it was just amazing how good he was. Just a natural, like a total natural. His career is gone. Those are just 3 quick examples of how fucking difficult it is over
Were you
there.
concerned at all?
I wasn't concerned because I was just this like, you know, we had official permission. Like we did everything. Well, sorry. We had all the official permissions, but we were doing things we weren't supposed to do. But at that time, particularly, it wasn't a problem. Like every single stand-up show that I put on was quote unquote illegal. You're supposed to shenpi. You're supposed to go to the censor, tell them you have a show, and you're supposed to send them the script. But
really?
And that's still to this day. That's a fact. Like that's not like me being dramatic. You're supposed to shenpi. So any public performance that you don't go to the censor, the local censor,
it's technically illegal.
Yes, but they don't care. Like these at that time, these small stand-up shows did not show up on their radar. In fact, I'll tell you how. So we had a guy from the CARFT, I think was that's an acronym for the Chinese government organization that watches over foreign media making media in China. So we had a CARFT guy. Chen was his name. And, you know, he eventually trusted us because he could see that, like, we weren't doing anything bad. But at the beginning, he was on us all the time. And he stopped us doing a few things, you know. But on one of the last things we filmed was I then started a Chinese language comedy night in the venue that I was using for the English language comedy night. Me and Tony Cho, we called it Yomo Xiaochu, which actually means like humor neighborhood because it was in a bookshop. So the humor section was the name of the English language show because it's kind of funny, right? Humor section, bookshop. But it doesn't translate into Chinese. But we just directly translated it anyway. So to Chinese people, very odd name of a comedy club, the Humor Neighborhood, because there's no like humor section of the bookshop, you know.
Yeah.
So Yomo Xiaochu was our Chinese language stand-up night, and Chen came, Chen, my censor, and I did a very not acceptable joke where I turned. So the joke in China is always, every night, the Chinese evening news comes on, Xinwen Lianbo. It comes on, and it's like the government are doing well, the people are happy, and the West is a mess. That will be like, that will be over the half an hour. That will be the journey. It begins with like all the government people in the building. Then they'll show like some government figure at like some factory, and all the people are like smiling. And then it'll be like, and you know, ISIS is killing people. You know what I mean? Like it'll always be the West is a mess.
That's so funny,
right? So then I made a rap song because they have a very obvious sting, you know the way like all news shows have like a sting here.
Yeah.
So I took the sting and I turned it into a beat, and I made a rap song called Xinwen Lianbo, and it was funny. It was basic. It was basically a rap song based on that idea of like, you know, the government's good, the people are happy, and the West is a mess.
That's funny.
And the chorus was good though. Oh, Xinwen Lianbo, Meitian. I can't even remember it anymore. But anyways, it was a fun rap, and the beat was good. I got a guy to make a good beat, and we're at I'm closing the show at the Bookworm, and everybody's waving their hands in the air, and I have a shot. We put in the documentary too. I got my censor laughing his fucking ass off at my Xinwen Lianbo, which this is like 100% against the rule joke. You know, like making fun of.
You're mocking the media.
I'm mocking propaganda.
And the censor guy that's supposed to arrest you is laughing.
Laughing because they don't care, and it would only be an issue if like they saw, but they weren't going to watch it.
It's actually funny, so they're like, wow.
But there was like one incident when we were filming where in the episode 3, I went up to the northeast of China. I went to a small city where Leo grew up to work in a restaurant, right? That's where a lot of those jokes that I do in English come from. Mm-hmm. And that was a real thing. But anyway, one I was staying with the staff for a while, and like they just used the public toilet, and the public toilet was disgusting, right? And we did a shot of the public toilet, and it was fucking disgusting. And the next day, it was pristine because they had gotten word that we filmed it, so the town cleaned it. So it was pristine the next day. So little shit.
You didn't even put it out. They just heard.
No, they heard that we were in there filming.
Americans filmed our toilet, and we have to clean it.
And it's funny because later on in the same episode, we do a toilet joke, which is basically that you don't get privacy in China, which is true. Like, because you still like shitting, like there's like 4 holes in the ground, and you just shit, and like, it's a guy next to you.
Oh, there's not a...
No, you just shit. And then you get used to it, actually. But like...
There's no guard?
No. Just there.
So in the way that you and I are looking at each other right now.
But we would be side by side.
And there's just 2 holes.
But yeah, but you end up just like chatting. You just like shitting, chatting.
No way.
They're usually smoking to get rid of the smell. Now, you see that less and less, but at that time, I mean, I've been to China many times. I've shat in a hole many times where other people are shitting in a hole.
Well, that's a different area also. Like, I do think there's a Western idea that, like, there is such a thing as China, when it's like, no, there's like these different cities that all have different cultures that
exactly.
are all
and like
so
different levels of wealth. And
yeah, like I had a friend of mine, actually, I wonder if you know him. He's a Australian guy that did a similar thing as you. He worked in Beijing. This is more actually, I wonder if you know him. He has, we might be able to edit this out actually. He has half a white.
Yeah, you're talking about Andy Curtin.
Yes.
So he helped me out a lot.
Oh,
so he
that's
ran
cool.
Kung Fu Comedy.
Oh,
and
wow,
I knew you were
cool.
talking about Andy. I should have just interrupted you.
Yeah,
Andy,
Australian guy speaking Chinese in
all
Beijing.
my English language comedy stuff at the beginning, Andy and Turner Sparks, who lives here now in New York, helped me out a lot.
He's the man. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah, so both those guys helped me out a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was telling me that like there's an area in China that like they just eat anything, quote unquote. I forget the area. It's like Guaozhen or something.
Oh, somewhere down south, I think. Yeah.
But he's like, Americans will look at China and be like, oh yeah, they just eat anything, yada, like the stereotype. And he's like, well, there's a part of China where they look at that as like the China of China.
Yes.
And it's like, oh yeah, I forget that like in America, it's such a massive country. We have all these stereotypes for all these different parts of the country.
Yes.
Alabama, California, New York. It's the same exact thing in China.
And you see that a lot in the stand-up there. Like, you know, and like some of it I didn't get or I started to get after a while, but a lot of making fun of the different regions and the stereotypes. So there, you would end up seeing a lot of like cultural similarities between the way people find things funny over there.
So if you're shitting in a hole with your friend, or like in one small rural part of China, that's not to say that everyone in Beijing is going into business meetings and then shitting in a hole next to each other.
No, like, and there's the great thing about China is there's public toilets everywhere. The problem is that a lot of them are disgusting. However, like when you're in an emergency, a fucking disgusting toilet is better than no toilet at all.
What
so
if
you never have a situation like in Manhattan where it's like, where the fuck am I going to go to the bathroom? There's always public toilets all over Beijing.
Now you have like, you would publicly admitted, I will let you know that you have IBS, potentially.
Oh yeah, well, I don't actually think I have IBS, but I something was going on.
Maybe.
Something was going on.
So I'm saying if you're in a public bathroom in a hole next to a guy and you're having an episode, an IBS problem, is that not awkward? Is that not like crazy?
Well, here's a real awkward situation. So in 2004, when I went there for the first time, I went to visit Leo and Leo's family. Of course, to be a rich, you know, they're so hospitable. So they take us out for fucking hot pot. Myself and my then girlfriend at the time, and we you can't not eat. It's like rude not to eat. And they fucking fill my bowl up with all this fucking hot pot. But the problem with hot pot is sometimes you don't leave that shit in long enough. Both myself and my ex got so violently ill that we ended up in the hospital in a suburb of Dalian in the northeast China. I've never been, it was coming out both ends to the point where like, it was just so disgusting. Anyway, we're sitting in this hospital. I'm with Leo and I'm on a drip at this stage, but I have to go to the bathroom, but it's not like, it's like a clinic. So I'm not like in a room. So I have to go to the fucking public toilet, which is not even that clean. And it's a hole in the ground with no, there is like a divider, but no door, but I'm on a drip. So Leo had to hold on to my drip while I fucking shat in the hole. And I remember saying to Leo, I was like, Leo, we're fucking friends now.
That's
like,
wild.
This is intimate.
Did he think it was intimate?
Just, what could you do? We just had to do it.
Like for him though, culturally, was that like, nah, I did this for my dad, and like.
I think holding up a drip while somebody's has diarrhea in a hole.
No matter where you are, it's pretty weird. All right, that's fair.
Yeah. But like Chinese guys in the shitting in the hole, they'd be like sitting there reading the paper and stuff.
It's just so interesting.
But anyway, if you're bored one day and somebody's watching episode 3, the same toilet that looked disgusting at the beginning of that episode is the same toilet where we do the joke. So I do this joke about how you never get privacy in China. And one of the jokes is there's 3 guys. This was a setup shot, but there's 3 guys sitting over the hole, and like it's one of the examples of like not even when you're taking a shit, because like the guy's fucking asking me questions. But that's actually true. Like I often be taking a shit and they'd be like, "Whoa, Nisha little slur him out." Like, "Are you from Russia or something?" You know, like start talking to you while you're shitting.
Wow. I mean, there is something nice about the squat. I'll be honest. I'm a pro squat guy.
All I can tell you is that we were meant to squat as shitting. You know how when you shit in the toilet, 50% of the time it doesn't come all the way out, right? And then you have this fucking annoying. Eddie Murphy did the joke about it years ago.
Yeah.
You know, you taking a shit, you cut it off, but like it's very rare that it doesn't all come out when you're squatting.
I got the squatty potty, dude.
Squatting's the way to shit.
Do you have a squatty potty?
I don't have a squatty potty. Somebody told me I should get a squatty potty.
Yeah, dude. You're the poster child. You're the one that actually experienced the way it should be.
Yeah. No, I loved. And when I was working that shitty job, because I did it for real. Like everything I do for real, because people always go like, why wouldn't you cheat? But it's like, because then I wouldn't have the real experience to do jokes about it.
Yeah.
So in actual fact, it's cheating to do it because you're just having all these experiences, which makes it easy to write material. To not do it was actually just make it harder on myself.
Interesting.
Because I wouldn't be having the experiences to talk about.
Yeah.
But you know the way like back when you worked like shitty jobs, right? Because I was working a real job. I was working in this fucking restaurant and I would get bored. So, I remember when I was younger and I was working a minimum wage job, I would just like go to the bathroom, and just like sit in the bathroom for 10 minutes just to get a break.
Wow.
But in China, you have to get good at squatting because if you want to chill in the bathroom, you got to squat. But I got so good at squatting that I would just like hide in the bathroom for 10 minutes in a full squat.
They have such good ankle mobility.
Yeah, but I never got that. I can't get my heels to the ground.
Really?
I was always so jealous of these guys, sitting on the side of the road smoking with their ass all the way to the floor with their heels on the ground, because I cannot do that.
Do you think they're better at it? Like biologically, do you think they're just good at that? Or do you think they just do it for a long time?
I think either they've doing it from birth, so it's natural, or actually, sometimes I really feel like they might be more genetically flexible than us.
Yeah. I mean, they
certainly care more,
What do you mean?
Like Chinese medicine, I like, trust me, I don't believe in all the Chinese medicine bullshit, but like the things that are good about it are they're very into like blood flow and they're very into mobility and exercise. So from a young age, you're thinking about your flexibility. You're thinking about your muscles.
Interesting. I mean, the greatest.
And you can see it. Go to Chinatown, go to Flushing, and watch old people walking around, hitting themselves, stretching, swinging their legs back and forth. They're much more naturally concerned about mobility.
That's a good point, actually. That is a funny thing that I'll notice that I feel like people don't talk about. It's like you'll just see like an older Chinese woman like hanging onto a fence, just swinging her leg.
Swinging her leg.
And you're like,
or an old Chinese woman walking backwards, hitting herself in the back.
What is that?
And it's so funny. I used to make the walking backwards thing. I used to think was weird, but then my buddy got older. He's like, "Oh, you got to check the knees over toes guy." Do you know about the knees over toes guy?
Of course, dude.
Yeah. Well, what's one of the main things that the knees over toe guy says when you're starting to work on your knees? Walk backwards. And the fucking Chinese were way ahead of the game. They're walking backwards because you're working other muscles.
Interesting.
And then they're hitting themselves all the time because they believe in the meridians and blood flow. And, so they're into. And honestly, some of it's mumbo jumbo, and some of it's just like it holds up against the most, the most rigid science. A lot of that stuff will hold up against.
Dude, look. I'm one of these guys that I'm kind of just like on board with this type of shit. Like first off, there's just too many people that have been doing this for too long in China for me to think that it's all bullshit. Like, and I've seen it firsthand. So my wife is a midwife. She delivers babies. That's what her job is. And so it's already that kind of world is a little bit more holistic, right? Like they have a much more like open attitude towards like, Eastern medicine as we call it. And they will do acupuncture on women in labor. And my wife personally, anecdotally, has had amazing success rates with giving laboring women acupuncture and them having babies within like 10 minutes.
Really?
She's like, it's remarkable. We don't know exactly.
Yeah.
She's like, we didn't grow up with any Eastern medicine tradition. We don't know Chinese medicine, but they bring in a Chinese guy that doesn't speak English, and he puts like 3 little needles into 3 specific parts, and then the baby comes out. And it's like, shit's so bizarre to her. They do a couple other things. My wife pointed me to an article, and again, maybe this is some woo-woo bullshit. I genuinely don't know. There's a thing that happens where babies will be breech, obviously. So the feet are basically pointing down. You're going to be born feet first, which adds a lot of complications to birth. But there's a treatment that used to just be kind of like Eastern medicine, kind of whatever, mumbo jumbo, that now has been accepted by like the modern medical society, where basically, and it sounds crazy, You burn a specific herb near the toe of the woman, and in like 85 to 90% of cases, the baby will flip around in the womb, will flip around and be able to be born the natural, normal way from burning an herb next to your foot. She pointed me to an article and she was like, no, this is published by like a Yale like peer-reviewed study. It's legit. She doesn't understand it. She's like, we do it and it works. I don't know why. Who knows what it is? And I was like, that's crazy. I don't know if it has to be near the toe, but that's like the Chinese meridian line where that specific thing attaches to your uterus.
I do believe that there is, you know, like some acupuncture does hold up to like real experiments. I believe.
Wild. It's wild.
But the one thing for sure that you can't argue with is that their obsession with mobility is healthy.
Yeah.
And I only wish that I had fucking done the shit that they did when I was younger, because if the only advice I could give to people is you fucking work on your hip mobility from youth.
Yeah.
From youth.
Yeah. No, dude, the best power lifters in the world are Chinese.
Is that right?
Yeah, some of the best that are coming out. Like, they obviously historically, I don't think they had like a powerlifting culture, so they weren't really doing it. But then in the last couple of years, I think the gold medalists at like last year's Olympic Games in like all these Olympic lifts, like, you know, overhead and split squat, they're all Chinese people. And it's just like these diesel Chinese dudes that are lifting insane weight. They're like breaking world records for like deadlifting. And I don't know. I assume it's just like a cultural heritage of like mobility, flexibility, and just like working on fucking squatting. I don't know. It's just.
I wonder if your wife knows about the other Chinese thing, which is when you have a baby, they call it guo yuezi, that a woman is not supposed to get out of bed for a month.
A month?
Yeah.
Wow.
They say if you exert yourself too much in the month after birth, that you'll have pain for the rest of your life. So Chinese women in China, and again, I'm open to correction on this, but I'm pretty sure that this will hold up to a Google. They will literally do hardly anything for a month after birth.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. Guo yuezi, like go a month.
Yeah. Go a month.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. What do you have other stories of like times when you were in China specifically that got like hairy or like illustrated a cultural touch point that like just blew your mind, that changed your perspective on the people?
Not really. You know, I really focused more on the similarity. Like I remember one time I had eaten a bit of a cookie, and then I gave the cookie to the daughter of the people that I was living with, because, you know, I lived with a family for a year. And they were like, no. Like, they were very, like, negative that I had given her something that I had bitten, but I don't know what that's about. But nothing, like, honestly, nothing jumps out. Like, nothing immediately comes to my mind where I was like, oh, that's a big no-no.
The stereotypes obviously around, like, food culture.
Food culture, there's a lot. And then you know what else there was a lot of? There was a lot of, like, social obligation stuff that, like, particularly like with Leo, and then like with some other Chinese people. Okay, I'll give you one directly related to stand-up. So Beijing Tokuoxiu Julabu, they call themselves Beituo. They were the first Beijing stand-up troupe, right? Again, like I said, with this collectivist mindset. But it was very new. And they welcomed me with open arms, and they're a huge part of my series. Like Beituo, I'm like incredibly grateful to them. But, you know, they were running shows like fucking Chinese people do. And this was 2013. I've been doing comedy since 1997. Like, I fucking know how to run shows. So I found a room in Renmin University where I was studying, and this cool Canadian Chinese guy had a cafe, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So I started this fucking stand-up night in the Renmin University, Mandarin one. And I was going to like start having different comics on. And I didn't ask the leader of Beituo, you know, because I didn't consider this to be like a Beijing Tokuoxiu Julabu show, you know? And it was a huge fucking thing. Huge thing. Like, so I let him go up because they were like, you can't, like, he's the boss. Like, they were literally like, he's the boss. You have to let him on. And I was like, fine, but like, you guys don't understand. This isn't a fucking Beituo show. Like, you guys are stand-up comedians. You're not Beituo. So that was the first time I realized I was clashing with the collectivist mindset.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and we had drama. I had drama with him. He was a cool guy. He was a cool guy, but in fairness to him, like the way I was doing it was a clash to the way that they do it in China. So he was like, who the fuck is this guy?
Wow.
You know, and so I actually have a lot of sympathy for him thinking that I was being an asshole because I was just coming in with my way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can imagine here we have all of our unwritten rules for stand-up that we just don't even think about.
Yeah.
Because it's just the way that it is. And if someone came from a different culture and was like, oh yeah, I'm going to bump you and jump on right now, you'd be like, the fuck? No, you're not.
Yeah.
But
Well, I hate MCs giving my credits because I came from Europe where we don't do credits.
Oh, that's funny.
And I'm always like, they're like, what credits? I'm like, I don't need a credit.
That's how I feel. I always do that.
Yeah, but then you know what happens? I feel like I've actually been being a dick because they're used to the rhythm of saying a credit and saying the name, so then they don't know what to say.
I always just say my credit is performs all over.
Yeah.
Like just say that. Like I don't know. I always feel
This
like
credit thing is nonsense. My whole
like,
career was no credits until I came to the States.
that's how I feel. I have no like.
And in Ireland, I had real credits.
Yeah,
My fucking credits over here suck. You know what I mean? You're gonna fucking say, I did a TV show you never heard of.
Yeah, you've seen it on Mark Gagnon's podcast. They're like, no, we haven't. I just don't get like, I don't know. The credit thing is just so weird. Like, yeah, he was on a show on MTV and the audience is like, okay. I guess it's supposed to like make it feel like.
Yeah, I think it comes from back in the day. Yeah. Also, like another cultural difference between Ireland and here is like in Ireland they don't have table service and there'll always be an interval. So there usually be like on a showcase show it'll be like host, 2 comics, break, host, 2 comics because they go and they get drinks and stuff, which I love. But now it seems weird to me when they have breaks. I'm like, come on, let's go. But I've gotten used to the American way now.
When we were doing shows, we just got back from Dublin at I think it was the Olympia.
Oh no, you did the O2.
The O2.
You guys did an arena.
Yeah.
Very impressed.
So awesome.
Yes.
It was so cool. Like one of the best crowds I think we had in the whole tour. Like the Irish were just so good. There's something about poverty that makes people laugh more.
You mean like, traditional? No, well, Irish are more fun, bro. If you're in the UK and then you go to Ireland, you're like, wait a minute, this is way better. Like, the Irish are more fun. And everybody says that. The Irish are the best crowds.
Yeah. No, it's the best. But we had to tell people during the show, like, hey, there's no intermission. Because they told us, they were like, hey, if you guys run it straight through, they might get up before Andrew goes on stage.
Yes.
And so I had to tell them, like, after my set, like, don't leave. Like, I could see people kind of started to get up after I was done.
I always have an interval in my Irish shows.
Really?
Always. I have an opener interval in my show. And I love it.
Really?
Yeah, like if I wasn't going to have an interval, I would only have somebody do 10 minutes and come on because I don't want them getting tired.
That's a good point.
But that is a difference. Like it always shocks me. Like I remember Aziz Ansari had like 4 openers and then him, no break. I was like, what are you doing? It's a fucking endurance test.
Yeah.
But that again, that's because I came from that side. Whereas people over here think it's weird that we do an interval.
That's interesting. When you were in China, were you single?
So I was single when I went to China, and then I met I stayed in China for an extra year because I loved doing stand-up in Mandarin. But I was no longer making the series. I was now just a comedian that lived in Beijing. So I did the Melbourne Comedy Festival. I did Edinburgh. I went back to Ireland for one run of shows. So I was like living in Beijing but working around the world. But most of my time I was focused on getting better at stand-up in Mandarin and developing the Chinese stand-up scene.
Yeah.
And halfway through the second year, I ended up going out with Xuan Xuan, my Chinese girlfriend, who honestly, we were very close. The problem was she didn't want to emigrate. So we tried to keep it going long distance for a while, but eventually, it didn't work out. But Xuan Xuan,
she's a Chinese citizen, grew up in China her whole life.
Yeah, and she's stand-up, and she's doing really well now with the content.
Oh, that's so
We're
cool.
not really in touch, but my buddy came over from China, and he let me know that she's after blowing up on like
on Douyin,
Douyin and Xiaohongshu and a couple of the other ones.
Oh, that's cool.
And doing sketches. She's in like a sketch group, so she's doing great. I had a quick chat with her. She's doing great, but she actually didn't get married. But anyway, that was actually it was a good relationship. Can I speak that it was a wonderful relationship, and I'm not speaking about it in terms of the practicalities of my life. However, I learned a lot more Chinese, and I learned a lot more about China from going out with her.
All my friends that like speak multiple languages, that learn them from immersing in the culture, typically I find that if they were single and pursuing women, they got better at English, or got better at whatever language they were learning. Like if you go to Italy and you're married and you live there for 3 months, I think you learn less Italian than if you go there single and you're
100%.
out and about, meeting girls, trying to flirt, trying to be funny, making jokes, like all in the language. I think it really helps. So I'm curious for you, did you find any interesting relational, like dissimilarities or things that you had to adjust to dating in China?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more chivalrous.
Oh, really?
There's like certain sort of chivalrous expectations.
Like
like this is like a tiny thing. It'll mean nothing to you, but like one time we went out on a double date with like a proper Chinese guy and his girlfriend, and he was like, so you know, in China it's communal eating, right? So all the dishes just go out in the middle, and you just be taking shit off.
Yeah.
So this guy, this boyfriend to the girl, he kept taking like a bit off and putting it on her plate, which to me in my Western mind is like how condescending.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. And you don't know how much she wants. You don't even know if she wants it. Like,
and
she
then
knows what to do.
Xuan said to me afterwards, like, it's so cute that he does it. You should do that. So she, you know, that would have been like just a quick example of like a chivalrous expectation.
That's so funny. Do they have a different attitude towards sex at all?
I mean, the sex thing was like, they're not as open about it for sure. And like none of those stand-up comedians were really talking about it, for example.
Really? Sex jokes would have been crazy.
And like people are saying, oh, you must have been killing them. I was not with a lot of Chinese women. I had one or two quick flings, and then my very serious relationship with Xuan. So like I didn't have a ton of experience with that. But certainly when I was there, I didn't feel like sex was as casual as it was in the West. However, I was often surprised in the few sexual experiences that I had. I was surprised how quick it converted into sex, because it just never seemed like that would be the case. So it's almost like the great unsaid is that we're just as into it as everybody else, but we're not going to talk about it. So you'll be quite surprised when it's happening as fast as it does.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because it seems more closed off, but then once you're in a relationship, it's like, hey, date 3, 4, 5, like we can get it cracking.
Yeah, and it was you know, it's really hard to. It's just not as open. 100%. It's not as open. They don't shave their pooing, which I'm fine with.
That's interesting.
And this is a joke, but it's 100% true story. Is I didn't know what the word for like when a woman is like loving it. Right? So we obviously be like, oh God, oh yeah, fucking, you know, I love it. Yeah, that's so good.
That's a
right?
Point. That's so funny.
So it turns out that in the word that Chinese women say when they're like loving it is 舒服, which it translates to English as comfortable. Right? But
this is
hilarious. I didn't know that you know, like, so obviously like comfortable in English has a meaning, right? But like 舒服 in Chinese means I'm loving it. So like obviously if a Chinese girl came to America and she was with some dude and he was like, fuck, oh my God, a Chinese girl would be like, why are you bringing God into this? Like, this is not a God time. Right? So that would be weird to them. Whereas for me, I was doing what I was doing, and she was like, oh, 舒服. And I was like, fucking, like a couch? Jesus Christ, I thought.
So funny.
I thought I was killing it here. I'm the IKEA of fucking cunnilingus.
That's so funny.
But that was like a funny little, that's a moment. That was a language moment of, oh shit.
Did you dirty talk in Mandarin?
So, well, actually, funny enough, I had a funny experience with a Chinese woman that lived in Ireland. That I got closer with after I learned Chinese, and we had a brief fling, but I tried to talk to her dirty, and she said, I only comfortable sexting in English. I feel weird when I sext in Chinese.
Really?
And I thought that was a very interesting insight into the connection between language and culture and identity, because actually she felt dirtier texting dirty in Chinese. And I can't articulate that 100%, but I think the story speaks for itself.
That's so interesting. Like either there's a sacred like perspective to the culture, or like it's the way her parents
she just feels free. In English, she just feels freer.
Yeah. And I wonder if there's less restriction on the language. Like in English, there's so much slang, and you can add words and
but they have it. They have it.
Yeah. I mean, do they?
I never got great at speaking dirty in Chinese. Actually,
do they bastardize the language as much as we do with English?
Honestly, I'm not the best person to say that, because at the end of the day, my fluency or not of Chinese is like still pretty basic.
Yeah.
So there are definitely other white guys and certainly other Chinese guys that would have a better grasp on like the evolution of language. Sure. Just like English, like language evolution is on steroids now because of the internet. Yeah. So like I even remember then that there was always like buzzwords. So like the comedians would often have jokes about whatever the sort of new buzzword was, you know, same as us, like, you know, people say mid now, or, you know, any of these new words, like there was comedians that were joking about whatever the mid of 2013, 2004, Slay or,
funny.
So they're having the same language evolutions. I'm just not I'm not on top of that.
Yeah.
And I was never, I never got to a language proficiency where I could heavily deal with the language jokes.
Right.
I was very much my humor, my understanding was fish out of water, funny double meanings based on like English translations, that kind of stuff. Like, do you ever watch Rafi Bastos?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, so like when I watch, I love his material because I can see that he's having the experience with English. Now he has a much better understanding of English than I do of Mandarin, but I can see he's having the same experience of English as I was having with Mandarin, because you begin to see the humor in the differences and double meanings.
Dances?
He dances, yeah. That I had jokes like that. And in Gaeilge too, actually. In Irish language, I had a lot of jokes about like why.
Yeah.
That's a why joke.
Right.
And that's a great, that was like a career maker for him. He dances, she dances. Why? So, that's why one of the reasons why I love him is because I know how entertaining that journey is. It's like so personally satisfying. So it's great then when you put it out there and it's satisfying to the masses as well.
That's a great point. You go through this experience where you understand or you observe something about a culture that everyone else missed. 1 billion people in this country, and they all missed this thing about.
Yeah, because you only see it as an outsider.
Exactly.
But that was my whole Irish career.
And so Rafi coming over from Brazil, right?
Yes.
He's able to look at English and American culture and be like, he dances, but I dance. Is he dancing more? It's just such a good bit.
Yeah, but it's funny to us.
Yeah, exactly.
We see the peculiarity of it, which you
so
don't see because it's just innate.
Of course.
So there are certain things that you don't see. You're naturally blinded by familiarity.
Right.
So that has been a huge part of my career is the seeing the third eye of the outsider.
Of course. And that makes sense, as we were kind of talking about a little bit before the show. Like, you've had such immense success, obviously in Ireland, throughout the UK, obviously in China. And I think to your point, like, you are a true outsider there.
Yes.
And you're able to come into the culture and observe things that they all miss. That's so satisfying to see. And it's so much harder to see those outsider-ish things when you're an insider.
100%. And two things going on there. First of all, it always frustrates me how much I don't feel like an outsider in the States because I have lived a lot of my life out of it. So I don't actually see those peculiarities. Mm-hmm. But number two, even if I did, it doesn't hit the same way because it's like, I don't know. There's something about the outsider noticing it that's funnier.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but I've benefited from it, but I also don't benefit it from it on this side.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But mainly you just don't see it though, you know?
Yeah. No, you just miss a lot of things. I mean, even me, I have a lot of jokes about being in New York and how different New York is than Florida. So like, I'm probably noticing things about New York that you don't notice despite you living here for, the early parts of your life.
But weirdly enough, I mean, it's been great being back in the States and it's made me a way better comic and a lot of great material. But weirdly enough, I definitely don't get inspired by American differences the same way I got inspired by Irish differences and Chinese differences.
Yeah, I mean, once you see those differences, though, they're so stark. And I think the interest factor is just, it's so night and day. Like just the way that the culture is in China, the way the culture is in Ireland, compared to in America, it's much more homogenous. Yeah,
there is. Yeah. There was actually this great comic in Ireland called Damien Clark, but he was from Australia. And he talked about how like Ireland is this tiny country, right, with so many accents. You know, you could drive like a half an hour, get out of the car, and it's like a different fucking accent. He's like, Australia, like you could get in the car, drive for 3 days, get out of the car, same fucking accent.
How you doing? All right, everywhere I go.
So there is a certain amount of homogenous aspects of American culture, but obviously there are differences too. But I have to say, I'm not a great. I don't have the awareness of. Like I was even watching a Shane Gillis bit the other day. You know, he has the bit about it's from I think his first special, and he's talking about how Alabama, they were all white until the 70s or whatever. Yeah. But then he starts talking about football, and he's like doing a joke about the fact that they had white corners. And I'm like, wow, I know this is so funny, but it's so interesting because I'm so not up on American football that I don't even know why it's funny that they Like, why is a corner black?
I feel the same way. I feel genuinely the same way.
Really?
No one in my family ever watched football. My parents didn't watch football. I've never been to a football game. Like, I understand it culturally, but like that joke specifically, the Shane joke where he's like, there's no black corners. There's endangered species. There's one at the zoo.
Yes.
It's like, it's such a funny joke.
I knew it was funny, and I laughed because I knew it was a great joke. But I also, and even though I watch football, like I can watch a football game and enjoy it, but I do not have a full understanding of what a corner does.
I texted my buddy Derek. I go, "Why are corners black?" I genuinely.
It's so funny. It must have popped up on yours recently too, or you saw it at the time.
Yeah, I saw it at the time it came out because I knew it was funny, but I just don't know enough about football. So like, I was like, "Why? What is the deal with that?" Like if it was something about like sprinting or something, like the joke would make more sense because I understand like the racial connection with sprinting in America. Black people are fast. That stereotype, but the corner thing just made no sense.
But even watching that bit, it's funny because it kind of ties into the conversation we're having. I remember being I remember thinking, because I only saw it just the other day, and I remember being like, this is a perfect example of like how like not having gone to high school here fully and just like certain aspects of not being here. Like I will never write a football joke.
Right. Yeah.
I never will. But he played football.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's what I thought was so cool. I was like, yeah, and it inspires his material, and I think that's awesome.
Or you might write the best football joke because you are an outsider and you're learning about it, and you're like, wait a second, this part of the game is so weird.
Yes. Well, I can tell you right now, at 48 years old, I'm not going to fucking. I'll continue watching with my limited knowledge, but I ain't fucking. I'm not learning.
There is something funny. I just got into football literally in the last like 6 months. I sat down with a buddy of mine that played college football, and I was like, explain the game to me. I genuinely was just like, teach me everything. Why is it good? What's interesting about it? And the breakdown that he kind of gave me is like, it's war. It's strategy.
Yes.
Like, if put yourself in the coach's position, all of a sudden the game is way more fun. Soccer is a player's game. You play soccer and it is just all flow.
It's fluid.
It's almost like art in a way where it's like, we're just going to kind of feel each other out.
It's improvisation.
It's all improv.
Yeah.
It's like once the game starts, the coach is kind of irrelevant. You don't need it. Like the coach obviously makes decisions, but you're just kind of feeling each other out and getting a collective energy with the other guys on the field. Whereas football is all chess. It's like strategy. It's like, okay, what are they going to do? What are we going to do to counteract what they're going to do? What do they think we're going to do? So we're going to double reverse psychology to do our thing. He was literally like, imagine soccer, imagine set pieces. You have corner kicks, free kicks, penalty kicks. Imagine the whole game is a game of free kicks.
Yes.
And you're like, that makes it way more fun. And now I'm watching it, and I'm watching games and enjoying it, but there's still like 50% of the game that I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much know what's happening all the time.
A punt goes, the guy catches it, kneels. And
but they fucked that up.
What is that about?
The kickoffs, they fucked it up. As a European sports fan, the changes that they made to football with the kickoff was very unfortunate.
And then they all gather.
They did that for safety.
Is that what it is?
Well, you could always kneel, but now the kicker is more forward, and most of the time it's just automatically going to the 20 or the 25-yard line. Like they've taken a lot of the randomness of the kickoff out of the game, which I think is unfortunate.
Like I don't get when they kick the ball and then all the guys scatter around it and they kind of like
they wait for it to go to a certain. They're trying to get further yards one way or the other.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think so. Yeah, but it's a good question. Put it out to the listener.
I'm watching the game and I'm enjoying it. Imagine watching a movie and being like, I don't get half the jokes. I don't get half of the plot. Like that's how I feel watching football. I'm still enjoying it, but I'm still like, this makes no sense to me.
That's how I get when I watch. I still try to watch Mandarin television to keep up my Chinese.
Yeah.
But the stories are always so fucking complicated, and even with subtitles, I always end up going to like episode 3 recap just to be like
on YouTube. Check something out.
Who the fuck is this? Which was that guy? And then it starts to make sense.
Did they have stereotypes about white people?
I mean, I wasn't that aware of it.
Did they have a name for you, like Gringo? Like
La Wai.
La Wai.
Yeah, it's one of the jokes in the special is a La Wai joke.
La
Wai means foreigner, but like, did you watch Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah.
So they say La Wai a lot in that because the Chinese immigrants still call us La Wai. And La Wai, I feel I'm open to correction here for any of the Chinese diaspora listening, but I feel like amongst the Chinese diaspora, La Wai has very much come to mean like white people. Now, I think they probably call black people La Wai too, but like, I read this great book, I actually forgot her name, about a Chinese immigrant came and lived illegally in America for a long time. It was a very good book, and I'm sad to have forgotten the name. But anyway, but she talks a lot about La Wai, and some of it's kind of negative because, fucking white people treating these immigrants like shit. So anyway, they call us La Wai.
It makes sense. I mean, most of their foreigners would be white. Like we do the same thing in America. Like if we were to say like WAP, like without papers, like that could refer to anyone without papers, but it means specifically Italians.
Yeah.
Because
that's funny. You know that all the time of calling people wops. I never knew that it was without papers.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, that's what I heard it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Papers. Yeah. But like
we called them guineas, and I still do to this day because Irish Americans and Italian Americans, we have our own thing.
Yeah, it's an ancient beast. There's one of the best.
My aunt Mary, she's still alive. She's so cool. But her and her husband, when I brought Hannah to meet her for the first time, because my mother died before. My parents never met Hannah, and so I brought her to my Aunt Mary, and she was telling the story of her and my Uncle Sal Palzola, big Italian, and they broke up and then they were getting back together, and in front of my Uncle Sal, as Italian as they come, she goes, and then my brother Kevin said, "Are you still meeting up with that guinea?" Like, no issue. Hannah calls it the G word. I was like, it's not that way with us.
It's so funny. I don't think
we're grandfathered in.
I don't think you have to abbreviate it if it's also the name of like an animal. You know what I mean?
It's grandfathered in. The Italian Americans, Irish Americans, it's a love-hate, man.
Yeah.
You call us mixed, we call you guineas. It's all good. We're good. We're good with each other.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, I guess the northeastern like beef amongst Irish and Italians, I never even understood this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like growing up in Florida,
it's real, bro.
You don't have it at all. Like it does not make sense to me.
But it's love hate because we're the one, really.
Yeah.
And it's a love hate. And I grew up in a very Irish Italian neighborhood, so I was acutely aware of all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting bullied by these guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's a deeper story to that, but I'm stopped telling it because I literally feel like it sounds more dramatic than it was. But there was some mafia connections to some of the people that were involved in threatening me, so it was stressful. It was genuinely stressful.
Really?
But I'd rather not tell because I feel like if I tell it too much, eventually these people are going to hear it, and then they're going to be like, "Why the fuck is this guy?" Like, why is this 48-year-old man? It was teenage shit. It was no big deal. Nothing bad happened. But at the time, it was stressful, though. Like, I have to say it was stressful. But, like, nothing bad happened, and it's not a big deal. It's just, like, it's just part of who I am today.
This is so funny. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because we got to talk about your amazing dick game. Yes, you. You right now, listen to my voice, my deep, soothing voice. You have an amazing dick game. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you know someone with an amazing dick game. Maybe you got a boyfriend. Who knows? But if you have an amazing dick game, there's a way that you can make it better. And that's with the good people over at Blue Chew. Mm-hmm. Blue Chew is an amazing service that basically delivers a chewable tablet that has the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, all that stuff. But this is the chew. It's at a fraction of the cost. And it's never been easier to get your hands on the greatest dick game of your life. Mm-hmm. Never been easier. I'm telling you. You can go to bluechew.com and you can submit all your information to a licensed person, a legit person that will then mail you a discreet, very unassuming, but very, very powerful package. You know what I'm talking about? The powerful package to your home. That's how easy it is. You don't got to go talk to a doctor and be like, I want, nope, easy. You got to just go on the internet. Bluechew.com. I want to get the best dick given of my life. And that's how you do it. Easy as that. And for the listeners of this show, of this program, you are going to get free first month of Blue Chew. Mm-hmm. You're going to be getting Blue Chew for free. All you got to do is pay $5 shipping. That's a cup of coffee. Black to be delivering that BBC. You know what I'm saying? That's bluechew.com, BLUECHEW.com. Use the promo code Gagnon, GAGNON, and receive your first month for free. That's bluechew.com. for more details and important safety information. And thank you so much, Blue Chew. I'm telling you, man, check out this product. Even if you're one of these people that's like, I don't know, I don't really need it. What are you talking about? It could be better. It can always be better. Let's say you're in the 1%, you're about to be in the 0.01% with Blue Chew. Now let's get back to the show. The one thing I loved about your special, a couple things. Actually, I meant to tell you this before, which I said kind of, the unapologeticness of you not like shying away. You don't have a fear of, it feels like of who you are, right? Like you open the special, obviously it's tongue in cheek, but being like white guy, yada, yada, yada. But it's in your face in a way that I find so fun. Like my favorite comic ever is Daniel Tosh. I think he's like,
really?
He's my favorite comic in the world, which no one talks about him, in my opinion. I think he's so underappreciated. Ask any comic that knew him growing up, they'd be like, oh yeah, he would just kill. He would show up.
He would kill. I worked at, would you believe it, in Ireland, and like the year 2000 or 2001.
Please tell me how.
No, but he was hot. He was hot then, and then back then he was supposed to blow up. You know, he signed a deal with Letterman's company, and he was about to blow up. And then that didn't happen initially. Tosh 2.0 came a number of years after that. So for a while, I remember being like, oh, I wonder what happened to him. And then suddenly he was like, and then suddenly I remember my little cousins were becoming aware of comedy, my first cousin's kids. And they were like asking me about comedy. And I was like, who do you like? They were like, Daniel Tosh 2.0. And I was like, oh, I worked with him in Ireland. And they were like, you know Daniel Tosh? You know, so then I realized that he had become humongous.
He's the man. I've never met him.
He had that killer bit about the Oscars. That's
like they put him in the way back.
You never see that happening. And he does the whole act out.
He crawls out of the chair, goes down, free to bed.
No, I remember that. Yeah. No, right. It's funny. I'm funny enough, not familiar enough. But, you know, I know you say that about the unapologeticness. I mean, that's just like my performance style, which is just very natural. It's who I am.
I think it's a New York thing, personally. Yes. I don't know. Maybe I'm making a judgment that's out of
No, but I have a joke that I took out of the special because it was so new that I was like, you know what, I'm going to save that. But the joke is that it's a problem in my real life because people misconstrue that whatever the hell you're feeling as like aggression when it's actually not. It's just the way that we all talked growing up.
Yeah.
So like Hannah, even though she grew up in Brooklyn, she wasn't raised like around that like New York energy.
Yeah.
So she'll think we're fighting when we're not. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Yeah. She's always like, why are you yelling at me? I'm like, no, I'm not. This is the normal volume.
This is bizarre because my wife has adopted this. We both are from Florida. We're both like pretty chill, kind of like just regular, kind of almost borderline soft-spoken in a way, and specifically my wife, like she's just an angel, and she now works with Hasidic Jews as a midwife. She literally, like, she's with like Brooklyn Jews all day.
Is she in Borough Park or something?
All over, anywhere there's like Orthodox Jews, religious Jews. She's in Crown Heights, out in Long Island. She's in Williamsburg, obviously
Rockland
where we live.
County.
Yeah, exactly. And so as a result, now we will kind of argue, and she'll yell. But not actually yell. It'll just be like that New York
way of expressing.
She's like, if you're gonna go with your friends, then go, or you can stay with me and we can hang here. Just do it. What are you gonna do? Just pick something.
Yes.
And I'm like, where is this coming from? I swear to God, we had a conversation where I was like,
I love that.
I was like, hey babe, I don't know what's going on. We're just talking right now, and you're kind of getting aggressive. She's like, I'm not aggressive.
Yeah.
And then she sat down with me and she goes, hey Mark, I think I need to apologize to you. I was like, why? She was like, this is just kind of how we talk at work. And it's sort of coming over in my personal life, and I didn't realize it until I went back to work, and I was like, oh, I'm adopting this like Brooklyn Jewishness, and it's my bad. And I was like, whoa, this is great. She doesn't stop it. She does it, which I actually love. It cuts out so much like old miscommunication in our relationship, where now she just tells me what is going on.
Yeah,
it's
get
awesome.
to the fucking point.
Especially because they're in birth. Like, she's delivering babies. Like, there's no time. So it's just like, hey, give me the thing. Like, it's just so direct. Whereas before she'd be like, excuse me, would you mind passing me the thing that I, like, it's just so, it's awesome. I'm genuinely a fan.
That's one of the things, like when I get together with my cousins, like the cousins I grew up with here, I just feel so normal because we are all so loud and like aggressive, but we don't mean to be aggressive. It's just the way that we talk. So it is, and the kids I grew up with in Queens too. It does feel good to be like in your natural habitat. But you know, the fact, I never made a decision to have like an onstage persona. It's just kind of an exaggerated version of who I am.
Which is, I think, how it should be.
Yeah, and the only thing that's annoying me, I don't know if you looked in the comments, I'm not a big comments guy, but it's hard to avoid the amount of people that are saying that I'm copying Bill Burr, which is driving me insane.
Oh, that's interesting.
Driving me insane because, well, I've been doing comedy since 1997, and I love Bill Burr, but he is not an inspiration of mine. I haven't even seen a lot of Bill Burr. I have a huge admiration for him, but like, I've never watched a full special of Bill Burr. Every clip I see of him, I love, but like, he's just not my inspiration, and these people just can't not hear Bill Burr. And I'm like, yo, it's just a coincidence. It is not. It's just we're two angry white Northeastern guys whose parents were probably a little bit aggressive.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think people that are not from the Northeast might hear it and be like, oh, it's the same thing.
Yes.
But it's like, no. You just understand these are people that come from the same environment. And so, of course, they're going to sound similar. These are like former Irish, like diaspora type people that are growing up in the Northeast in cities.
Yeah.
And I mean, not for nothing, Bill like came up in New York for years. You know what I mean? So like, obviously he's like a Boston guy, but he has so much New York in him.
Yeah. And also, you know, it was never a decision, but like I came from a time as a kid in the 80s when stand-up would come on TV. It was a different time. A lot of it was aggressive. Like, I'm inspired by that. And honestly, I love the black comics because they're fucking high energy. So like, my inspiration comes from aggression and high energy. Not like deliberate. It's just that's what I was exposed to, and that's what I loved.
Have you one thing that I loved in the special is like I love the way you talk about generational differences. I think
but I feel like that's easy. Like, would you believe I took a lot of that? I took more of that out.
Oh, really?
You know, because I didn't want people to think that I was just like a nostalgia jockey.
Interesting.
You know,
so I didn't get that feeling. Like,
which is and I'm annoyed at myself because I second now the way the flow of the special I'm happy with, but I'm a little annoyed at myself that I was maybe a little over analytical about the judgment of others, thinking that might be considered like not unique. You know what I mean? I took out some stuff about getting hit and stuff like that as a kid because I just didn't want the special to become too top heavy with nostalgia.
Interesting.
Or like boomer jokes.
I see. I get the hesitation. I didn't get the feeling personally. And as someone that's from a different generation than you, I actually enjoy hearing the differences.
Yeah,
like there's so many generational things that I don't understand how you did, like genuinely. Like
I don't understand it. I can't believe that we did, but
the rejection thing I thought was such an interesting point. Like,
that routine really ended up working out.
Yeah, it's great.
That took a long time.
Really?
I actually recorded a version of that like 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And went on to an Irish special that, you know, I never put up onto YouTube because I was like, you know what, I'm going to get that stuff better. But that journey of that routine took a long time to get good. I think there was a time where it was pretty basic, that routine, actually. Yeah. But eventually
it's solid. It's solid. And just the concept, I think, is so true. Like, hey, getting rejected every day in real life hurts so much more than when someone doesn't match. And it doesn't feel like rejection. I just thought it was such an astute observation about generational differences. I enjoyed that.
But also, can I point out that, like, I've had both experiences. I was a single man in my 30s. Like, I've done plenty of apps.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't care what anybody says. It's fucking easier to meet women. If you're a heterosexual male, it's easier to meet women now than when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like, it is an absolute fact.
Yeah.
And it's also obviously easier to figure out the boundaries of sexuality, just in terms of like how open people are, and like the fact that you can sext, and like all that stuff didn't exist. So it was there was a lot more sort of steps on the journey to knowing what you could and couldn't do with a woman. And I didn't get into that much on that special, but like all that stuff is very different, and it's really a lot easier now. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, just being able to say to a woman like, "Hey, do you want to hook up?"
Breaking the ice, man. Like, it's just so much easier to break the ice with the app, or even just an Instagram slide. It's just so much easier. I don't care what anybody says. I used to fucking have to go up and, you know, it was so. Anybody my age had the same experience, but like it was nerve-wracking to talk to a stranger.
I think people even discount how just like logistically impossible it seems to me to like, go on a date. Like before cell phones, the idea of like, hey, we're gonna meet up at a time, at a place that neither of us maybe have been to, that like we know where it is, and if you're 30 minutes late, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, if you lose your patience, like you're going to be gone.
If you just get jammed up, like I'm late profusely. I'm late all the time, as you've seen today. Like,
yes.
And if I'm like, I don't know, there's a possibility like if I was 10 more minutes late, you would have just been here and been like, all right.
Back in the day, I would have been wondering what was going on.
Exactly. It's just a crazy thing.
Yeah. Now, the only thing I will say is that often maybe you might go to a payphone and like call her house and say, hey, do you know if Sam left? You know, and they'd be like, oh yeah, she's on the way. They might have just been you know, so it wasn't always like 100%.
Right.
But like a lot of time it was just like, how long do you wait?
Or just like a map. A map is so crazy. I genuinely think I'm bad at directions because I never had to learn how to be good at directions.
Yeah.
Like I would just, if I need to go somewhere, I'd type into my phone and it would tell me where to go. And I genuinely, to this day, I don't have any situational awareness. I don't know how streets work.
Yeah,
even
Hannah's
in New York.
terrible at it.
Do you think it's generational, or do you think it's
I think some of it's generational and some of it's, but for sure, because obviously part of that routine is I say that there are certain skills that we don't need anymore that I thought were good. And whether to be good at directions or not is important, it doesn't matter because we don't need to be. But like, we used to have to, like, it would be like, hey, excuse me, sir, can you tell me how to get to Lace's roller skating rink in New Hyde Park? And he'd be like, oh yeah, so what you want to do is you're going to have to go up there, the third light is Jericho Turnpike. You're going to take a left, and you know what I mean. Like you had to remember that then.
Yeah.
So it just became more innate to like remember where you were going and to like visualize the journey.
Yeah.
You know,
and you get the chance to like interact with another human. Like you were forced to like, mesh with people. You had to go up to a guy and be like, how do I go where I'm going? Whereas now, like, you don't need to. You just
somebody asked me for directions recently, and I was like, I literally said, you don't have Google Maps? Like, that's what I said.
You're part of the problem, dude. This is a guy trying to make you feel nostalgic. What the fuck, dude?
What the fuck's the matter with you? But it turns out she was like, I'd say recently immigrated and was not good with the phone. So I did end up helping her. But my first thing was, you don't have Google Maps.
Yeah, look it up, motherfucker.
But I remember one time, Katie Boyle, we were joking about her, but we were talking about her before the show, positively. And so when we were doing the podcast together, sometimes just by virtue of practicality, we would do an episode in the car, because I'm sure you know this, that cars are very good acoustically. They're essentially the same acoustics as a recording studio. So I said, I had spots at the Cellar, so I was like, we'll do the episode in the car. So I was parked on West 3rd Street, if you know it, but close to LaGuardia Place. So West 3rd and Sullivan. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm saying I know. I have no idea.
Yeah, West 3rd and Sullivan, outside the little coffee shop there in the corner, Irving Farm. And Katie Boyle was at the corner of Bleecker Street and McDougal. McDougal is the street that the Cellar is on. Bleecker is one street south from West 3rd, the street that I was on. So I said, I'm just on the corner of Sullivan and West 3rd. All you got to do is walk up past the Cellar and take a right. And she goes, oh, can you just send me the address? It's on, so I can Google map it. And I was like, okay, but like, you just walk up and take a right. It's a 90-degree angle, and I'll be there on the left-hand side as you're walking down. And she was like, no, you have to send it to me.
I feel the same way. I get it. I understand. I'm on Team Katie, bro. I get that feeling of like, I don't know. Like, you can try to tell me, just send me the thing, and I'll do it in the way I know, which is the phone. I'll look it up.
We speak a different language, man.
Bro, it's wild. I genuinely am so bad at it.
And New York's a grid anyway, so it's also easy.
You would think it's easy, but it's not.
But I like knowing a place. Like, me and Hannah and I can go on vacation, and like by the end of the vacation, like I will be able to get myself around, and she will be just as disorientated as the day she arrived.
Yep, that's me.
She just lets me,
figure it out.
I do all the navigating. I'm the navigator.
Yeah. Were there any generational differences between like the relationship?
With her? Well, we're 15 and a half years apart. Not many, not many. Like, because obviously, like, whatever, I'm a modern dude, not too many. Just obviously, there's just the odd time where she'll be kind of baffled by my existence at a time which she considers history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the fall of the Berlin Wall, or, like the 1984 LA Olympics.
Or you just bring up a reference and she's like, what?
Yeah, that happens a lot. I'm actually in between her parents' age and like I'm right in the middle. So like I have a lot in common with the parents that she doesn't understand with, and then I have some stuff in common with her that they don't understand. But they're just, stuff comes up, but it's just funny, but not really that much of especially because you're a comic, right? If you're a comic, you're just like on top of everything.
Yeah.
So you know what happens? Sometimes this doesn't annoy me, but it's kind of funny. She will tell me about stuff from her childhood, like in a way that's like, oh, this was a thing when I was a kid. And I was like, well, you know that everything that was a thing when you were a kid, I know. When I was a kid,
also there.
I was there.
I've been here longer than you.
Like I know Usher.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is my jam. It's I remember 50 Cent having a mixtape.
I was still going to parties when I was 25. Like, I'm not like a fucking, what do you think I am?
Yeah. So there's not too much. But you know what, there'll be like little moments where like I just fucking love Radiohead.
Yeah.
Like I am literally the peak Radiohead generation.
Really?
Radiohead speaks to me in very deep ways. And like Hannah, like she would probably say to her friends that almost gives her the ick, and that like there's every now and then where there'll just be an acute cultural difference between us as a result of our ages. And like to her, that's just very sort of like navel-gazily kind of like older guy.
That's funny.
Like, and she does not get
grunge, sad boy, 90s alternative. She's
yeah,
like,
she does not get Radiohead.
Yeah.
Like we tried to listen to it and she was like, what the fuck? Oh, do you know what? One day, Do you know who Sigur Rós is?
No.
Oh, Sigur Rós. Anyway, I love Sigur Rós, another fucking music of my generation. And I went to pick her up from the Long Island Railroad out in West Hampton, and she got in the car, and like we're driving out, and like after 2 minutes, she was like, "What the fuck? Can you turn that fucking on?" It was driving her insane. And to me, it was like
therapeutic.
Literally therapy. Like I was so deep in nostalgia and warmth, and then like she couldn't even. It was like. It was like scratching on a chalkboard to her, and stuff like that every now and then. But like that can also happen in non-age gap relationships.
How'd you guys meet?
I slid into her DMs.
Really?
Yeah, I think at some stage she had popped up on Nikki Glazer's story, and I was just like, "Oh, cute comic." I just followed her. Nothing creepy. I just followed her. I didn't contact her.
You guys are married. It's allowed to be
No,
creepy.
I know, but I mean, like, I just followed her.
It's not any type of like creepiness if you marry her. You know what I mean? Remember that.
And then but then like she would pop up in, my algorithm sometimes in the stories, and I became aware of her. I could tell that she had done some, at the time I didn't even understand like the culture of Bravo or any of that stuff. I could just see that she was on what looked like to me to be some sort of like MTV kind of like reality type show, but I didn't really know much about it. But, she would pop up. So I was aware, of her like posting videos of like her in hot tubs. And then when the pandemic hit, she was popping up in my algorithm with like the stuff we were all posting during the pandemic, dancing to The Weeknd and, TikTok-y type stuff. So I was just aware of her, but I didn't know anything of her awareness of me. But needless to say, the heart of the pandemic, July of 2020, she posted a story from Shelter Island. She was having lunch with Luann, Countess Luann from the Real Housewives of New York. And I didn't even know who she was, but I just saw that she was in Shelter Island, and I was isolating out in West Hampton, Long Island, so not that far. And I checked, and she was following me, which I did not know. So I actually never knew that she followed me back when I followed her.
Yeah.
So I literally slid into her DMs, and I was like, "Oh my God, you're out east." And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "You want to meet for coffee?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, how about Saturday?" She was like, "Yeah." I was like, so she was like, "I have to get the ferry." I was like, "I'll pick you up from the Shelter Island ferry Saturday, 2:00. And that was it.
Oh, that's cool.
But she had actually, she was a D1, she was a tennis player all her life, thought she was going to be a professional tennis player, burnt out at the end of college, decided to pack it in, got like a shitty fucking sales job, just like didn't know what she was doing with her life. So during that time in her life, she went to the Comedy Cellar with workmates and had actually seen me and remembered thinking like, "Oh, he's cute." But I was talking about living in Ireland, so just like she didn't pay any attention to it. But when I had actually slid, she was like, "Oh, that's that cute comic that I saw at the Cellar." So she actually had been aware of me.
Wow.
So that's
did
why
she say cute, or did you add that?
I'm quoting her.
She said you
Sorry,
were cute.
I should have said quote unquote.
Did she say you were cute? Or I'm just trying to see if you're adding that, like just trying to add some extra.
She said no. I'm quoting her. I've heard her tell the story.
Okay.
So that's why she wasn't. That's why she responded immediately, because she actually was aware of of who I was. But I hadn't, funnily enough, been popping up in her algorithm. And you know what? She had actually. I was on Raya. And she had popped up on my Raya, and I had swiped right on her. And that's a funny age gap moment. But she was like, "Oh, you never popped up on mine." But she didn't have the age high enough.
No. That's so funny.
So she would have never met me on Raya. I wasn't in the right parameters.
Wow.
So, but anyway, so it was a slide, and then we hit it off straight away. We hit it off straight away.
That's really cool.
And I never dated a comic, and I would have been very against it. But actually, I take all that back, because the familiarity of each other's life, and just like.
Wait, what about the Chinese girl that was a comic?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I consider that a little. Yeah,
but
you're right. You're
it's
absolutely
different.
right. You're calling me out.
Yeah,
Take
sorry.
accountability.
My bad,
no, you're
my
right.
bad.
But it's weird. That's another funny cultural difference. Like, I never really considered her properly like a stand-up.
Because I guess the way that stand-up was at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Like,
But yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. But also, you know what? The context of what I'm talking about was that, like, because me and Schulz were just like, there's just so much going on with the language and the cultural differences. But like, I just, and an English speaking stand-up, I just always avoided it because I felt like it would be like problematic. But it's actually the opposite, because it's just so great to have all that in common, and then just like not be frustrated with each other when you got to travel. So actually it turned out to be quite practical. But I wouldn't have thought that. But immediately we hit it off anyway. So
do you guys do shows together?
We do the odd time. Like if she's doing like a show in a really cool spot, I will open for her, like fucking Aspen, Colorado, which is why I'm fucking sitting here in a leg brace. But
So it's her fault.
Well, it's not her fault because I'm the skier. She doesn't ski.
Oh, really?
She doesn't ski.
I did this with my wife.
To be honest, she most likely said yes to those shows because she knew that I would love to go. And she was right, and it happens.
Fuck.
For those that don't know, I'm sitting here with a broken leg and a torn ACL in a leg brace.
You went too hard?
You know, I didn't go too hard in terms of the skiing, but what I did was, if anyone knows Aspen, I know the sympathy level just drops through the fucking floor. That's what sucks. People are like, what happens? Like, I was skiing in Aspen.
Fuck
like,
you.
Oh, fuck you. You deserve it. Yeah. So
that is a good point. If you break your leg in Aspen, I'm like, that's good.
Yeah, good for you. That's what you deserve.
Like, if there's an avalanche in Aspen, I'm like, the world's getting better. This is what the world needs.
There's less than the 1% took a hit.
Exactly, dude.
So
fuck yeah.
Anyway, there's a place there called the Highland Bowl, which is like a famous hike. It's not like particularly crazy, but it's a tough hike. And this particular day, they didn't have. Normally, they take you a third of the way, like on a snowcat, but the snowcat wasn't running. So essentially, it's like a mile hike at 12,000 something feet, very high altitude, one of the higher altitudes in the skiing world. And I did the hike, but I struggled on the hike. I really was not fit altitude-wise. And I got there, and it was great. And it was all, one girl recognized me from Instagram, and it was all very fun. I was having fun with all these locals. And then they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to go to Ozone. You can follow us. And it just very early on, not doing anything crazy, I just slipped. A fall I've had a million times. I wasn't like, oh, I'm sending it, and I fucking fell. I literally fell at like not a lot of pace. I just kind of slipped because I was fucking tired from the hike. And then the momentum kept taking me, but only one of my skis popped off. The other one didn't pop off in time. And the fucking momentum, I started sliding. That ski finally popped, but it only popped after it twisted my knee to the point where I broke my leg and tore my ACL. And I knew straight away something bad had happened. And after that happened, I slid for at least another 2 minutes. I slid 1,400 feet, tumbling and sliding. I slid 1,400 feet to the point where the people that were getting my skis were like dots.
Like they were like, where'd the guy go? That just fell.
Yeah. Four different people called Mountain Rescue.
Damn.
I didn't even call Mountain Rescue.
They just pulled up on the.
They just knew. They were like, this is bad.
Damn.
No, they didn't pull up on a snowmobile because you can't get to this run on a lift. It's unliftable. But they got there with their abilities.
So how'd you get down? They like kind of towed you.
They tobogganed me.
Oh wow.
They tobogganed me.
Which looks fun. I feel like people discount that part.
Yeah, it's not as fun as it looks, but it was fine. But they tobogganed me to a lift, and because you couldn't get all the way down, so they tobogganed me to a lift, and then they hung me. There's like a hanging apparatus. They clip you in, and so I was on a lift, like lying down, like hanging, and they were next to me. So I was like long ways, and then they tobogganed me all the way down.
How do they get you off the lift? When
they
you're
carry
hanging,
you.
Like you're really just like getting hung from it, like you're dangling?
like with like a what would you just like a little clip in.
Yeah, like a carabiner, like climbing rope.
But I wasn't hanging off the bottom. When they said hanging, I visualized it as I would be hanging off the bottom.
Yeah, like a helicopter.
No, so they slid me into the like. They I don't know how. Actually, to be honest, I never saw it because I was just lying down. But I was like, I know I was clipped into. I was clipped in. And I was just hanging there.
Damn.
And then we got to the top, and then they took me all the way to the bottom, and then I was put into an ambulance and brought to the hospital. And they told me I broke my leg within 45 minutes actually. And that must have been the moment the shock wore off because I actually nearly fainted. I had to be lied down. They had to lie me down flat because like the blood, like I literally was about to faint and like shit myself and puke.
Femur?
It was my fibula, so it's actually a good break.
Yeah.
It was a handy, the leg break. I just was shocked when they told me. I was just thinking about my knee. It never entered my brain that I would fucking break my leg.
Yeah.
Like never entered my brain.
Oh, that sucks, dude.
Was
this after the show?
Yeah, the show was the night before.
Wow. So you did the show, it was great, and then
next day, man.
Damn.
Listen,
dude.
I 10 times a day I just go over the decisions that I made that day, but there's nothing you can do.
Oh, that's brutal.
It's so annoying because it's like I'm going to Ireland tonight to get a fucking ACL reconstruction next week, and I just know that it's like it is what it is, man. But I'm not looking for sympathy. To anyone who's been through ACL tear knows it's just one of those things, man.
Do you have a generational perspective on TikTok and like social media comedy and like how content is permeating through social? Like you have been a comic for so long, you've seen it, and now you're married to one of like the pioneers of the most like preeminent social media. Like people have blown up on social media. Like in your perspective of it, how do you find that it's affecting comedy? Is it changing your stand-up at all?
Number one, I preferred it the old way. Now, I'm not complaining about the way that it's changed, but you got to realize that, like, I'm having to upskill in my 40s. Like, I was somebody who learned how to do it the old way, which was get fucking good at live comedy enough that people want to see your show, but also, more importantly, that the gatekeepers, quote unquote, see you and think, we'd like to work with this guy. And then pitch ideas for TV shows and get those TV shows to get a greater notoriety and, you know, make specials on DVD. My specials were all for DVDs.
Yeah, I saw it on Wikipedia. It's funny. DVD special. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how we did specials. Because actually, in the States, it was HBO specials, but Europe actually never had my second special, which was also a DVD, was actually originally made as a Christmas. It went out on Irish TV at Christmas. But there wasn't like the culture of a television special.
Right.
You know, I just happened to do this stand-up show on Irish TV. But anyway, and the whole thing about that was that you got good at doing live comedy, and you didn't worry about your stuff being filmed and, you know, put out in a way. And, you know, like, I'm not, none of that stuff I would complain about because it's just the way the world is now. But there were aspects of it that were definitely better, you know? Yeah. And it was just a lot more about the live. Now, there was plenty of people that took advantage of that, different comedy festivals like rip you off, but you went there because you could be seen. But in fairness, it was good fun, and the internet has changed that. But on the flip side, the great thing about the way the internet has changed it is that, like, some people are just not great at live comedy, but they're really good at fucking content, you know? Right? And like, and I think that that's underappreciated, the liberation that gave certain amount of people who just had funny ideas or knew how to be funny, and suddenly they could do it with content, right? Yeah. You know,
no, don't even need an audience. Just tell the bit into the phone,
yeah,
and see
or whatever. You know, they're visually talented. You know, like, I mean, Bo Burnham encapsulates all of it, so he just happens to have all the skills. And he was an early viral guy, but like, he has all the skills. But like, some people don't have the live skill, but they have the funny skill. They got the funny bones, and they like being on their own and making visually funny ideas. So like, I think all in all, it's been a positive. It's just that, like, I didn't learn to be that, so I didn't resist it for too long. But like, I was annoyed. That I had to pivot,
and you had to like learn it all, and like learn the TikTok.
I didn't want to learn it. I didn't want to learn how to edit. I didn't want to know which app was most important. I didn't want to learn any of that because I hate editing. I hate computers. I loved fucking filling up my schedule with a lot of fucking live shows.
Doing shit.
I'm a laborer, man. I'm a fucking union comedy guy. You know, like,
let me clock in, do my time, get out.
Like, I'm like a physical worker. Like, for me, working was touring, getting on stage, writing. That was work to me. Now it's changed, but I also see. So, for example, like, I feel like in the States, I've actually not. Like, I would have preferred to have gotten like more help from the industry since I've been coming back to the States. I've actually felt like it's been harder. I'm not making not blaming, no anger, but I have not been happy with my progression industry-wise in the States. Not creatively, but industry-wise in the States. And I very belatedly did this YouTube special, and the wonder of being able to just take my special and put it on YouTube and then put those clips on the internet, that is actually liberating.
And you're enjoying that process. Like, the
no,
feedback.
I was good on I was reasonable with content, but only in fits and starts. And then the rest of the time I just had a pain in my ass with it. But I never really like put in the effort to like record the special, put it up. And then now it's like, I see it. I go, well, isn't this fucking great that I can put this up? I still have a frustration that I had to do it that way.
Yeah.
But it's great that you can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've 100% embraced it, but I do think that there are issues with it, but there's pros and cons.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's so many great comics that we know about now that came up in a different generation that we might not have known about because they weren't self-starters or they weren't, entrepreneurs, and they might have just stayed kind of working in these comedy clubs and been killers that we never saw because there wasn't a network that put them on. And now it's like you kind of have to have an entrepreneurial spirit, which
you do.
Which if you don't have it, then it's going to really inhibit your growth. But that might not necessarily be the funniest guys. I mean, we know, I noticed this more in New York personally, that I think the best comics in the world are in this city, no question. and we don't know about a lot of them. Because, like you were saying, I think they're from a generation where they kind of just like to clock in, clock out. They're at the cellar every night. And there's guys, I'm sure we're both
Greer Barnes.
Sure.
Yeah, he's got a lot of industry rep, but he still hasn't had like the breakout.
One of the greatest comics.
Killer.
Like, ask anyone. And yeah, he's just like sort of, not as popular as other comedians that he's way more talented than, just because it's not, out and distributed in the way that.
Well, I'll tell you, man, like there's guys that I don't want to follow, and like nobody knows who they are. But like I don't want to follow these motherfuckers because they kill.
People don't know that. People don't know that about New York. Like in LA, all the best comedians you know about. Like I don't think there's like a secret gem. Obviously, there's like comics that guys like us like, but there's not like a secret hidden like murderer type dude. Whereas in New York, like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like there have been people that I've talked to that go see a show at the Cellar, and they're like, I just saw this guy. He's my new favorite comedian. He's the best comic I've ever seen.
And tell me why that's Daniel Simonson.
Yeah, sure, exactly. And it's Daniel Simonson. I'm like, yeah, he's a genius. He's truly a genius.
Yeah.
And
it's funny. Not a name drop, but Casey Musgraves, the country star, came to see Hannah's show.
Yeah.
And I was on, and they're mad cool, and they hung out afterwards, and they love comedy. And Casey Musgraves goes to me, I went to the Comedy Cellar, and I saw the best comic. I don't know his name. He was Norwegian. I was like, Daniel Simonson.
Yeah.
She's like, he is the best comic I have ever seen.
Yeah. And
like they love Daniel Simonson.
I want to put more light on that, like as a person. Like I feel like I have like a personal mission, just as someone that loves comedy, to say like people need to know about this shit.
Yeah,
like they need to know about the fucking.
But sometimes the thing about his is like sometimes it doesn't translate on the video. So I understand why sometimes he can have an issue where like the awkwardness. Because it's like it's deliberately awkward, right?
Yeah.
Like that's part of the jam. Mm-hmm. The awkwardness is part of the humor. But sometimes like the atmosphere that's created that creates a laugh sometimes maybe might not come across on the video. And that, a lot of it too is just some people's acts are just like I've had to change the way that I perform because if I go, people always go, why aren't you putting more content? You have all these specials, and I go back on these fucking specials. They're very long-winded.
Interesting.
They're not made for clips.
Yeah, they're made for like one time sitting, watching it like a movie.
But yeah, and there's an interwoven story, and the stories are long, and they are funny, and people are fucking laughing. And I remember at the time thinking they were amazing, but now they're fucking useless to me. Like honestly, like I get frustrated sometimes because I have a memory of a bit. And I recently got a special from 2009, and I was like so excited. I was like, yeah, this might. I started to change as a comedian, and then I'm gonna be able to use. And then I'm watching, I'm like, oh my god, a fucking callback from fucking 20 minutes ago. I can't fucking use this.
Yeah, how does it work? Yeah. And it's one of the biggest pops in the special, I'm sure. Yeah,
yes,
it's the biggest laugh.
And at the end of the day, like you did think about specials in a. You did a special
was a holistic view.
Yeah, there was a bit more of a journey with them,
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the other thing about when you're asking me about content. Like you do have to change. But then also what I have found is that like you can be surprised how like one half of a bit actually works way better than you would expect.
On social.
I've split up some bits and I've been like, it's a pity because they're not going to get that bit. But they don't care. The other bit's good enough.
Yeah, you need two punchlines. Like if you have two punchlines in this quarter of the bit, like that's all that matters. That part's funny. You can chop this thing up in your mind. You're like, no, it is a chunk. It is the story of this thing that's 6 minutes long, but it's really a bunch of individualized jokes that can all go up on their own.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to accept that too.
Yeah. It's tricky. I mean, I'm so curious. Like, has Hannah's success been inspirational to you? Where you're like, oh wow, like that's how this medium can be transposed into social, like seeing the way her clips have blown up.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously I'm living with that, so that was one. But
what do you mean?
Schulz, look, no, like that obviously is one of the inspirations. Mm-hmm. Like watching that happen for her.
Right.
Schulz is another.
Yeah, of course.
Matteo in more recent times. Like eventually you see enough people just put in the fucking effort and get results that you can't sit there and go, why is it not happening to me? Mm-hmm. Like eventually you have to go, I can say that if I make the effort and it doesn't happen, but I can't say that when I'm not doing it.
Right. Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the fact with Hannah is more just like inspirational in that she started to just be like, you got to just do it.
Yeah.
That
attitude is so awesome. I don't even really have that. I'm really nervous about like putting out stand-up. I haven't really put out any. And I'm like, I get anxious about it. I'm like, is it good enough? Is it the way I want to represent? I get so in my head. And I just kind of need to have that attitude of like,
you got to just put it up.
Yeah.
And because the industry has changed, so you kind of have to like be less discerning. You actually have to be less discerning, but I don't mean that as like a diss on the stuff that people's putting up, but like, you know, like it's more important for it to be up than for it to be like perfect.
Let the algorithm sort it out.
Yeah. So anyway, she's very good at basically just like putting me under pressure to do it. But I did see, you know, there was a time where, you know, she finished on this reality show and it was like a bad ending. And, you know, she was pretty deflated. And like, I remember she just said to me, I'm going to focus on TikTok. She literally said to me, this is before like she had any followers on TikTok. She was like, I'm going to focus on TikTok. And she just like every day was just like making content for TikTok.
So cool.
That was all her just like saying, I'm going to do it. People, everyone has their opinions and people blow up and then they like to say that there was this bit of luck or that bit of luck. But like at the end of the day, she made a decision. She flooded fucking TikTok with content and like it changed her fucking life.
Yeah.
Like changed her life.
That's really, really cool.
You know, so like I did see that.
Yeah.
Now I do have to tell you that this current run of content that I'm putting up, it's not the first time. Other times I have been pretty persistent and I did not get the breaks. And I had those conversations, say with Hannah, where I was like, you know, it's pretty fucking frustrating because I'm throwing the shit down and the algorithm, you know, like it's not giving me any help. So there were times where I did get frustrated.
Of course.
You know, but I did say to her, I was like, it would be so much easier for me if I could just like, you know, just get a couple of like easy ones. You know, you kind of like, you're waiting for that moment where like.
Well, you have. I mean, there's a couple clips that have gone wild. Yeah.
This time.
Right.
This is literally the time that I was kind of waiting for. I don't know how to explain it, but like I was kind of thinking like there has to be a time where like you get a bit of momentum.
Right.
You know?
And
because when you get the momentum, it inspires you to do more.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas when you don't get the momentum and you're like, oh God, this is such a pain in my ass. It's not fucking worth it.
I got a couple more weeks of like frustration before I just say, fuck it. You know
what
I mean?
Like, and I did kind of give up or I would get busy or I'd go to Ireland or, you know, so there were times where I had a little bit of momentum, but not enough where like whereas now suddenly, and I'm sure this happened with you, and certainly I feel like it happened with Matteo, like there comes a moment where you drop stuff, it starts to kick off, it starts to make sense, and then you're like, I gotta make more.
Yeah.
And that's the way I feel now.
You taste it, you feel it.
Yeah.
You go, oh wow, this is for me. I can do it.
Yeah. And honestly, I've been doing comedy since 1997. This is the first time in a long time where I'm like, can't wait to be like making more shit.
I see that's awesome.
I've for a long time being back in the States, I have really been inspired by just like working in the States, gigging in the States, small crowds, big crowds, just like getting better as a comedian in the United States. I really have enjoyed that. But like, I didn't have that sense of like, I need to be doing more material or whatever, because like there was just no need for that. I was still just going out there trying to fucking kill.
Yeah.
Whereas like, this is the first time where I'm like, oh shit, yeah, people are really fucking into this, and now I got to make more of it.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel now.
It's awesome. I think that's the best attitude, and that's genuinely what makes me happy about kind of like the way
the new way
content is kind of moving.
Yes,
is like,
and I'm with that now.
Guys like you that are so funny and so talented, and it must be even additionally frustrating for you. I don't know that like, you've been doing comedy for 25 years. Like it's like you've been, I'm killing in this club. Like I've performed in these theaters. I kill in these theaters. Like, and then I put a clip out online and it gets 300 views. And it's like, there's a disconnect happening.
Yes.
I do the thing. And now when it's being put on digital, it's not doing the thing that it does when it's in the room. And that would drive me fucking crazy.
Well, you want to know my controversial take? I think the algorithm at times, not always, can be ageist. But now I'm contradicting myself because my clips have been doing well. But
are you posting on Facebook?
Oh, Facebook's my secret place.
See, there we go.
Facebook is where my people are.
There we go. No, I'm being serious.
No, I have 300,000 plus followers on.
That's awesome.
I've been quiet. Actually, the last year I've been putting the effort in on Facebook.
That's
my secret place.
Yeah. We're gonna keep it that way. Okay, I like that.
No, but like Facebook is like the more my age group there.
Yeah,
you know?
That's awesome though. Like I'm at this point. Have you seen this translate to ticket sales? Where like you're going to shows.
I feel like this time is going to be the real tester. Is like if this current this has been a clear change.
Yeah.
The last sort of 4 weeks of my life have been fun and exciting, other than breaking my leg, because I feel like for the first time that I might get some American momentum, right? Whether it continues or not, I don't know. But I haven't put it to the test though. So I don't actually have a ton of shows booked. So that has to be put to the test now over the next 6 months. So we'll see. You just never know, right? You don't know.
Awesome. I'm excited for you.
So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I has to be a bump.
Yeah.
After that, who knows?
It's gonna be really cool.
We'll see.
No. I think people are gonna be coming out, especially now that the clips, like seeing the clips pop off on Instagram makes me so happy. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, there's just you to me remind me of just so many like New York guys that are so talented. And I tell people about you, and I tell people about other comics in New York, and people go, "Oh, I gotta check them out. I've never heard of them." I'm like, ugh. Like, what do you even think about? Like, what do you even think comedy is if you're not watching these guys?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
but that's what Matteo was a good inspiration for me too, because we're close enough, me and Matteo, and like I've gigged with him many times, and like to me, it was always inexplicable. Now he wasn't in the industry long enough where he would have had any great frustration. I think even without the internet, I think in the old way he would have blown up too. Mm-hmm. But like the fact that he just stopped waiting and was like, "Fucking, I'm gonna do it," and like the change to his life.
Yeah,
I mean. Like the change to his life is immense.
He's like shut down the club famous now. Like, have you seen this? Like, I was talking to him, and I mean, first off, all my gay friends are just like, "Do you know Matteo Lane?" Like, it's
in
like
Ireland,
it's a thing. And even like friends of like my parents are like, "Oh, your son does comedy? Does he know Matteo Lane?" Like, it's that level. And he was even telling me, he's like, "Yeah, I can't really go to like gay clubs anymore." Not that he really went out that much, like beforehand.
Yeah, but that's fame, man.
He's like, I go out and it's like everyone, and he would be probably embarrassed that I'm even sharing this because he's so humble, but he's like, I would go out and people would, it's like, "Oh, he's here. The guy's here." And all from just like consistently posting these clips.
But the reality is that like I used to hate following Matteo, but like he's just a killer, like an absolute killer. And it was only a matter of time. But the fact that he just went, "Fuck it." And like, honestly, the way the industry is these days, I have no idea why he wasn't getting more help from the industry, because he fits into the sort of like...
Well, he talked about that with us. I asked him about that, and I was like, "Well, I'm sure like you're a handsome gay dude that sings opera. Like, how is the industry not all over you?" He was like, "I talked with Netflix," and I'm hoping I'm getting this accurate, but he said that he spoke with a streamer, and they were kind of like, "Oh, can you talk about your struggle?" Yes. And he was like, "My family loves me. I have an awesome like Italian family that I'm still so close with. Me being gay did not affect my relationship with my dad." And they were like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "Yeah."
See, that's the thing, man.
And that's the corporate shit where they're like, "Hey, let's try to spin this narrative." And they were like, "Wait, he's like fun and he says the F word. Like, this is not the kind of gay we want."
Yeah. And, so he just said, "Fuck it, I'm not gonna wait." And like, look how that's played out. So Hannah and Matteo and what Andrew was doing, but that was a longer journey. That was like, that was beyond, because I was like, where does this guy get the fucking energy? But like, basically all the people that just said, "I'm going to do it myself."
Yeah.
And even Katie recently, I was like, look at Kate, So I was like, I had to just at least do it. But you know what's funny? That special, I filmed that in May.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I procrastinated putting it out because I actually literally thought it wasn't good.
Wait, why?
I just was judging the shit out of it. Honestly, Hannah was just like, "You just have to put it out." I was like, "Okay, fine, fuck it." Like I finally put it. I couldn't edit it. I couldn't look through the edit, phases. I just like, eventually I said, "Hannah, you got to watch this next." I can't fucking watch it. Like I fucking like slammed the computer down. I fucking hated it, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
Because like it's gone so much better than I expected.
I get this feeling.
I hated it.
Yeah.
I couldn't even look at it.
I get this feeling. I've only put out like a couple clips, and I remember editing them like with almost like shame. I was like, "Oh, I hate how I said that word, and I wish I changed the. I should work on this another week." Like, it's just like so much, and it's all internalized insecurity and shame that I'm dealing with, that I'm like projecting onto this thing that is good, and I would just feel like ugh, and then I put it out, and then people love it, and I was like, "This is wild. I got to figure out my head," because
what the fuck?
It's beyond being a critic. It's just like being just a fucking like an abusive relationship
with yourself. Well, that's deep.
Yeah,
but that's true. But yeah, I was very critical of it, man.
Yeah.
So I'm actually quite shocked at the reaction. Look, by the way, it's not like a runaway success or anything, but like I can just tell that people are like people are surprised at how good it is in their perception, right? Which to me is really surprising because I literally nearly didn't put it out.
I mean, it's crazy. That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. But I mean, yeah.
That's the artist's mind.
Yeah, I guess. Just torture. That's the Irish mind.
I have to say, that's one thing for me that like, this has been a good, it's been a good experience for me because, when you're making a special for DVD, like somebody's waiting for that. So like, it just has to get done.
You gotta do it.
Whereas like, this was just like, whenever I want to fucking say the edit's done and upload it to my fucking YouTube.
The worst.
So that was hard for me because it was just all on me. In fact, even when I put it up, I was like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
Because for years, like it was just such an event to have a special.
The thing is,
it's just like,
here's the title. Publish.
Yeah, pop it up, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, enough about me.
I'm grateful for Hannah that she pushed you to put that shit out.
Yeah, and she really did. I have to give her credit.
That people get to see how funny you are and just how talented you are.
She's the executive producer. Some people are like, why are so many people talking about the executive production in the comments? It's because she went on her pod and she was like, oh, make sure you tell everybody how good it was executively produced.
Yeah, I'm sure like her fans are now coming out to see you and becoming your fans. Does that
there's a crossover, but at the end of the day, like there is some boomer humor in there, you know what I mean? So like, as much as it resonated with you, it's not resonating with all the girlies.
Yeah. That's interesting,
and that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. And
lean into that shit, bro. Lean in, like I don't know, be like. That's what I love.
Be
about
who you are.
You're
just accept it.
You're authentically
You're a 48-year-old white dude.
But that's great. Like my dad will send me clips. Oh, there's this woman, and I forget her name. She's very funny.
Leanne Morgan.
My dad loves her. He'll send me clips of her. And
she was inspiring to me too, just in the sense that it was just like, this fucking funny shit about being a 60-year-old woman.
Yeah. And there's no shame. There's no guilt. Like, oh, is this boomer? It's like, yo, fuck these millennials, fuck these Gen Z kids. This is the shit I'm on. Like, that's fire. Like, no matter where you're from, who gives a fuck if it's boomer? If it's true to you and you think it's funny, there are a million otother Des Bishops out there that are like, oh, wow, that is funny. And they're they want to go to the shows.
I mean, and it's really good if somebody young like you finds the humor in it.
Yeah.
Because obviously in my critic's mind, I go, all the young comics are going like, oh, fucking boomer humor.
Well, I have to understand, I have a gift from God, okay? And I'm very good at understanding comedy. So that's why. I'm unique. I'm special, actually, Des. That's really the matter of fact. But, dude, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and spending the time with me.
This is great. I mean, this is the only, since I broke my leg, this is the only work that I've done.
That's amazing. Will you come back? Will you chop it up with me again soon?
Anytime, especially if you have a theme that we need to research, let me know, man. I'm right over the bridge.
No, I want to research you. I like chopping it up with you, man. This was really fun.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
And everyone should check out your special immediately.
Of all people. Yeah. Which is a passive aggressive. There's the last thing I'll say as we're leaving. I went to the MTV Music Awards with Hannah, and we got a photo, like a pop, one of those photos at the thing, and so all the Irish like gossip sites wrote about it. But the first line of one of the Irish gossip sites was, Des Bishop of all people was at the MTV Music Awards. It's very passive aggressive, but I loved it because it's so Irish and it's so like, I love that shit. So that's where I got the name. So the name is actually passive aggressive.
It's great.
Thanks.
It's great. Everyone should check it out. Thank you, Des. Let's do this again soon.